Chapter 663. When everything was really calm, summer solstice came to the ruins of a palace that had completely collapsed according to her memory. This palace was also in the corner of Mount Dibbing, a place that was not usually noticed. Summer solstice stood beside the ruins and was silent for a while, then gently waved her hand. Her gentle movement brought a gust of wind. The powerful wind blew the ruins up with a rhythm. On the dusty floor, she found a switch and pressed it. The ground was shaking slightly. The cracked floor was separated to both sides, and the cracks on the ground were shattered, looking more and more ferocious. A deep passage appeared in front of summer solstice. The light at the front of the passage had been extinguished, and the alloy walls on both sides were slightly distorted. Therefore, when the passage opened, the sound was extremely harsh. Summer solstice looked calm and walked along the passage. At the end of the passage was not a secret research room with a high-tech atmosphere, but a rather luxurious and comfortable space. When summer solstice came in, 4 or 5 middle-aged men and women in white research uniforms were sitting on the sofa, talking about something with a dignified face. Seeing summer solstice coming in, they stood up at the same time and said respectfully, "Madam, what are you talking about?" Summer solstice chuckled and took the initiative to ask, "There are some small problems in the research process. We are discussing whether there is a better solution." The oldest middle-aged man had white hair on his temples. As he spoke, he picked up a notebook from his pocket and quickly jotted something down. Then he smiled and said, "So far, it seems that the results of the discussion are not bad." The ground of Mount Dibbing had long been a mess with blood flowing like a river. But separated by the thick alloy walls, the ground and the underground were 2 completely different worlds. Just like many people rarely cared about what the real underground core places of the Wang family of Beihai were doing, they just chose to pay attention to the results. These people in the Underground Research Institute also rarely paid attention to what was happening on the ground. At this moment, these people in front of them didn't even know what was happening on the ground. Summer solstice didn't say much. She just nodded and said casually, "Where is Naylan? The doctor has just made a new discovery and is making a record." The oldest middle-aged man replied. When it came to the doctor, his respectful attitude was far better than when he was facing summer solstice. Summer solstice nodded and said, "Go ahead." Then she walked to one of the rooms. The middle-aged men and women looked at each other for a moment. They wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, they didn't stop him. In the center of the resting area, there was a room that stood out from the masses. The room was located in the center, and the silver door frame could be said to be the most eye-catching color in the resting area. Xiaji stopped in front of the silver door and knocked on it. The room was silent for a moment before a pleasant voice rang out, "Come in." Summer solstice pushed the door open. The room was filled with silvery light that shone on her body. Her body seemed to be somewhat transparent. This was an incomparably pure room. The walls, the table, the chairs, the bed, and the bedsheets were all silver. The exquisite room was not big. A very young woman was sitting in front of a small desk. She wore a pair of silver glasses and was typing seriously on the keyboard. When Xiaji walked in, she didn't even raise her head. She just said lightly, "What's the matter?" Focus men are very attractive. Focus women are more attractive. The woman had delicate and neat short hair and a jade-like face. She sat quietly in front of the computer in a meticulous posture. The whole person looked as beautiful as a painting. Her delicate face was extremely focused and almost serious. This seriousness turned into a kind of coldness that kept people thousands of miles away, like an iceberg in a room full of silver light. The light blended together and was extremely cold and sharp. "I heard that you have a new discovery?" Summer solstice closed the door, stood in the room full of silver light, and laughed. The sound of typing on the keyboard suddenly stopped. The woman behind the screen finally raised her head and saw summer solstice. She seemed to be stunned for a while, then stood up and called her auntie in a flat voice. She was not warm, not cold. The silver glasses were taken off by her. She looked at summer solstice and didn't ask her to sit down. She just said quietly, "Auntie, what's the matter?" Without the cover of her eyes suddenly became extremely charming. They were different from the black pupils of ordinary people. There was a trace of incomparably deep and enchanting silver in her eyes. Resplendent, silent, enchanting, yet incomparably arrogant. The Wang family of Beihai had an indomitable sword emperor, who supported everything of the Wang family of Beihai like a sea-stabilizing needle. Under the huge figure of Wang Tianzong, there were also many soul figures in the Wang family of Beihai. Some were well-known. Some were unknown. Some of them rarely appeared, but their names had already spread far and wide. The young woman in front of him happened to belong to the third category. She rarely left Mount Dibing and had never left Beihai. But in Zhongzhou State and the Dark World, almost everyone who paid attention to the Wang family of Beihai knew that there was such a code name. Silver Eyes. She had a double doctorate in human biology and genetics, and was the main person in charge of the biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai. Perhaps such an identity was not enough to attract everyone's attention. But in recent years, there had been clear evidence that the woman with the code name Silver Eyes had devoted herself to research that had always attracted worldwide attention. This was the core project of the Wang family of Beihai. The development of the third generation of immortality potion was currently in charge of the woman in front of him. She was Nalan Shuriying, the genius of this generation of the Nalan family of Beihai. The Nalan family was not one of the 7 major sword-holding families in Beihai, but in the past 200 years, the patriarch of the Nalan family of every generation had a name recognized by countless people. The first famous doctor in Zhongzhou State. This was a real famous doctor family, or even a real Dr. King family. Summer Solstice looked at Nalan Shuriying quietly. Her eyes were a little distressed. It was not pity, but pity and some regret. She took the initiative to sit down on a chair next to her. She looked at the other party's silver and proud eyes and didn't speak for a long time. Nalan Shuriying put down her work and silently poured a glass of water for Summer Solstice. Up there, Summer Solstice pointed up and whispered. Something happened just now, but it's over now. Li Tianlan? Nalan Shuriying asked. Summer Solstice was a little surprised. How do you know? I talked to my father on the phone a few days ago. He said that Beihai has not been peaceful recently. Nalan Shuriying said indifferently. Yes, it's not just peaceful. From the south to the north, he really penetrated the whole Beihai. Summer Solstice held the glass of water, and was silent for a long time. Then she laughed at herself. A strange emotion flashed through Nalan Shuriying's silver eyes. She grew up in Beihai, so she naturally knew how powerful the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai province was. After hundreds of years of development, the Wang family of Beihai today was a family that was infinitely close to perfection. The so-called perfection meant that there was no weakness. The Wang family of Beihai had almost no weakness. Force, foundation, power, wealth, and talent reserve. The Wang family of Beihai had everything. In such a Wang family of Beihai, in such a Beihai province, could someone really sweep all the way and directly step into Mount Dibing? Nalan Shuriying had no concept of this form of strength. She didn't understand martial arts, so she naturally didn't know what the so-called invincibility was. She only cared about one result. Did we lose? Summer Solstice was silent for a long time. Although it was a little embarrassing, there were some things that she still had to tell the truth. We lost. Nalan Shuriying's fingers trembled slightly. Her eyes were still calm, and the subtle emotional fluctuations just now had completely calmed down. She lowered her head slightly and asked, Dijiang also lost? Dijiang entered the invincible realm. Summer Solstice said softly. Nalan Shuriying didn't speak and was lost in thought. It's very chaotic up there now. A lot of things have to be dealt with, and it can't be done in a short time. Summer Solstice took a deep breath, looked at Nalan Shuriying, and suddenly smiled. Nalan, have you ever thought about leaving Beihai for a while? Nalan Shuriying didn't seem to hear the question. She shook her head. We may have lost, but Li Tianlan didn't win either. Everyone knows that the real valuable core places of Mount Dibing are some research institutes located underground. Even if he wins the battle on the ground, how many people can he kill? As long as those research institutes are not destroyed, the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai will not be shaken. She paused and said lightly, At most, it will be a little embarrassing. This can also prove that Li Tianlan is very sober. Summer Solstice said. It's not that he doesn't want to touch our research institutes, but he can't. We won't let him touch them, neither will Zhongzhou State. He also knows this very well. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't see it. Nalan Shuriying didn't speak. She didn't understand these things, so she didn't bother to ask. She wanted to ask how Dijiang was, but she swallowed the words when they were on the tip of her tongue. Why are you telling me this? After a long period of silence, she asked faintly. Do you want to leave Beihai? Well, for a while. Summer Solstice repeated the question just now. Nalan Shuriying didn't speak. She looked at Summer Solstice with a puzzled expression. Leave. There was a blank emotion in her silver eyes. Where to? Go to Tiannan or Yuzhou? Summer Solstice deliberated, and was a little uncertain. We need you to do your best to cure a wounded person. I'll tell the lab in your home, and I'll assign you the most professional assistants. Nalan Shuriying understood. Is this Li Tianlan's condition? She asked softly. Summer Solstice agreed to his condition, which meant the compromise of the Wang family of Beihai. How many years had the Wang family of Beihai never given in the dark world? Had it already reached this step? Summer Solstice finally smiled bitterly without hiding it. In an angle that Nalan Shuriying couldn't see, she clenched her fists tightly. Li Tianlan's condition? It could be said that, but it was more than that. The Wang family of Beihai had to ensure that Dongqing Rushi recovered, so Nalan Shuriying leaving Mount Dibing was just the first step. Wang Yuedong's sword finally stopped Li Tianlan from stepping on the stage of formidable person. But it couldn't stop the silver moon from falling into Beihai. And it couldn't stop her from negotiating with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was so generous, but what the Wang family of Beihai had to pay was more than just Nalan Shuriying. She thought about the series of conditions, and her arms were trembling slightly. More than 20 years ago, she united with Kunlun City to set off the Li family's treason case, which was equivalent to ending the glory of the Li family with her own hands. And today, more than 20 years later, the series of conditions. Were they conditions? She shook her head. No. She whispered in a complicated tone. This is the rise of the Li family. Chapter 664. Dongqing Wudi didn't sleep all night. That night, countless people in Zhongzhou State, and even the entire dark world waited silently for dawn. The mighty vanguard was still gathering toward the floating island, and Kanglin in the light of dawn. In the pavilion on the hillside, Dongqing Wudi gently patted the ancient railing, and looked at the still rushing Kanglin River. He was as solemn as a statue. Bai Qingzhao sat on the stone bench behind him, and put the teapot that he had been playing with all night on the table. He looked a little restless. No news from Tianlan? Dongqing Wudi shook his head slowly and said lightly, no news is good news. Bai Qingzhao was silent for a while and did not speak. He climbed Mount Dibing alone. Li Tianlan let the whole dark world see his courage. But it also meant that he had to face countless dangers. Although Dongqing Wudi mobilized a large number of troops and fundamentally suppressed the most powerful Beihai core of the Wang family of Beihai, neither of them was sure whether there was any backup plan on Mount Dibing. It had been a night since Li Tianlan stepped into Mount Dibing, but they still did not receive any news about Mount Dibing. There shouldn't be any problem. Dongqing Wudi suddenly said. With Tianlan's current strength, there can be no accident if he defeats Dijiang on Mount Dibing. Now the Wang family of Beihai has internal and external troubles. It is impossible for Summer Solstice to take action in person. If she doesn't take action, Mount Dibing will not have the power to balance Tianlan. Bai Qingzhao's fingers unconsciously rubbed the teapot in front of him. After a long time he said, is it possible for Wang Tianzong to take action by force? This had always been his biggest concern, and the focus of everyone in the dark world. The eternal sword in Eastern Europe could be said to be the strongest sword in hundreds of years. People could be sure that Wang Tianzong was seriously injured in that sword, but no one could be sure how serious Wang Tianzong's injury was. If they were not sure, no one dared to act rashly. Li Tianlan's approach gave everyone a chance to observe the Wang family of Beihai. Tianguang's spirit lock platform. All the way, the entire Beihai province was constantly in turmoil. Wang Tianzong never showed up. This made the whole dark world realize something, but they could not be sure, or they could not believe it. Until today, Li Tianlan, who had defeated the entire Beihai province, set foot on Mount Dibing. Would Wang Tianzong show up? If he appeared, based on the realm he showed in Eastern Europe, even if he could barely make a sword move, Li Tianlan would not be able to block it. Impossible. Dongqing Wudi smiled and replied in a light but affirmative voice. He's lucky to be alive now. Maybe he's already dead. It's impossible for him to take action by force. Bai Qingzhao turned his head in the direction of Shengzhou and did not speak for a long time. Don't worry. Dongqing Wudi sat opposite him and poured himself a cup of cold tea that had long been cold. Although there is no news yet, it should be soon. Don't you think it's strange? Bai Qingzhao suddenly asked. What do you mean? Dongqing Wudi glanced at him. The Wang family of Beihai is too quiet. Even without Wang Tianzong, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai is still extremely strong. But this time, their performance is too quiet, so quiet that it can even be said to be a little weak. Tianlan defeated the entire Beihai province. Mount Dibing is facing the enemy so passively, and Dijiang is asking to be humiliated. Do they really have no means to threaten Li Tianlan? Even if they don't have force, the Wang family of Beihai has never been weak in science and technology. Well, even if we don't talk about it, since Tianlan stepped into Beihai, has there been any movement in Zhongzhou state? No. Not at all. The Southeast group has been silent all this time. This is too abnormal. Bai Qingzhao's voice was calm and doubtful. Don't you understand? Dongqing Wudi laughed. Because Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou state. He said slowly. Zhongzhou state is a country, a camp, and there are rules in the same camp. Tianlan came to Beihai this time to ask for an explanation. He stepped on the Wang family's face, but he never did anything. What Zhongzhou state can't accept is to abide by the rules. Even if the Wang family of Beihai really has the means to kill Tianlan, they can't use it. If they use it, they don't abide by the rules. Within the rules, as long as Tianlan has the strength, he can sweep everything. What can the Wang family of Beihai do to him? It's not like that. Bai Qingzhao shook his head solemnly. Even if the Wang family of Beihai doesn't touch Tianlan, can't the Southeast group make a fuss in other places? The Wang family of Beihai was the strongest force in the dark world. In Zhongzhou state, the Southeast group led by the Wang family of Beihai was also one of the strongest groups in Zhongzhou state. Its influence was obviously stronger than that of the giant group, and even the academics. The unusual silence of the Southeast group was what made him most uneasy. It's still the same sentence. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou state. Am I right to say that? Dongqing Wudi asked. Of course. Bai Qingzhao said without hesitation. It's true. For hundreds of years, this sentence has been said in Beihai and Zhongzhou state. Dongqing Wudi's smile was a little cold. It's a fact. But who will really think that such a fact is a fact? In history, many decisions of the Wang family of Beihai have more or less affected the direction of the general trend of Zhongzhou state. Of course, such an influence is often benign. But generation after generation of ruling groups and rulers, they will not think that benign is good. Dongqing Wudi waved his hand. No one will deny the contribution and importance of the Wang family of Beihai to Zhongzhou state. But Beihai is just a province, and the Wang family is just a family. A family, but it affects the general trend of the whole Zhongzhou state. No matter how good such an influence is, what's the point in the eyes of those in power? It's meaningless. They will only think that it's abnormal. Whether it's good or bad, such a result is indeed abnormal. Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou state, and Beihai province belongs to Zhongzhou state. Ha, ha, ha. For hundreds of years, every generation of rulers will think about a problem at some time. Do you know what it is? In Dongqing Wudi's light voice, Bai Qingzhao clearly perceived a huge, almost majestic pressure. He subconsciously sat up straight and shook his head. The problem they think about is surprisingly consistent. When the Wang family of Beihai influenced Zhongzhou state countless times, every ruler will think that Beihai province belongs to Zhongzhou state. But because of the existence of the Wang family, what is the actual situation? Does the Wang family of Beihai belong to Zhongzhou state, or does Zhongzhou state actually belong to the Wang family of Beihai? His clear and faint voice was like a thunder. rolling over Bai Qingzhao's head in an instant. Bai Qingzhao's face changed. In the cool morning light of Beihai, the wind of the Kanglan River blew across both sides. But his forehead was instantly covered with a layer of cold sweat. After all, Beihai belonged to Zhongzhou State. Or had Zhongzhou State always belonged to the Wang family of Beihai? This could be said to be the most sensitive question. Dongqing Rushi waved her hand. The answer is not important. The important thing is that I have just said that it's abnormal. The Southeast group is not deliberately silent, but it has to be silent. Because they are also in power, they may not think it's abnormal. But there are 6 groups in Zhongzhou State. The will of the Southeast group is very important, but the will of the other 5 groups is equally important. If they think it's abnormal, then it's abnormal. Dongqing Wudi said calmly. These you. Bai Qingzhao's tone was a little dry. The president talked to me about this topic. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a while, then slowly said, since it's abnormal, we have to correct it. Bai Qingzhao's breathing was a little uneven. How to correct it? Beihai province belongs to Zhongzhou State. This is the truth, and the truth should become the real truth. Dongqing Wudi said. Don't you understand? At least for now. The Wang family of Beihai has temporarily lacked the power to sweep everything. Therefore, the current Beihai and the Southeast group are not facing the pressure brought by the alliance of the giant group and the academics. They are facing the pressure from the tacit alliance of the 5 groups in Zhongzhou State. They must remain silent. Bai Qingzhao was silent for a long time. No wonder. Although everything Li Tianlan did in Beihai did not touch the bottom line, it was not without impropriety. But Zhongzhou State was always silent. So that was it. Zhongzhou State completely wanted to use Li Tianlan to expose the weakness of the Wang family of Beihai to everyone. When everyone noticed the weakness of Beihai and was ready to take action, Zhongzhou State would attack strongly and sweep everything away. Beihai must realize the benefits of being close to Zhongzhou State, and they must also be aware of their own position. They were just a province of Zhongzhou State, not the master of Zhongzhou State. Let's be clear. Zhongzhou State's move was completely to quietly weaken the autonomy of the Wang family of Beihai and Beihai province. You already have the clearest goal? Bai Qingzhao smiled bitterly. He was sure that such a plan was only brewing in the minds of a limited number of people, and it might even only be brewing in the minds of a few council members of Zhongzhou State. Many members might not be qualified to know. Bai Qingzhao knew that he did not have enough authority, but he could not help but ask. At present, the clearest goal is to nationalize the number 03 base in Beihai. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Bai Qingzhao's expression suddenly changed, and he even stood up directly. In the silence that lasted for countless years and generations, Zhongzhou State finally showed its long-hidden fangs in the most suitable opportunity. To the Wang family of Beihai, Zhongzhou State's move was not necessarily a stab to the Wang family of Beihai, but this series of actions was undoubtedly putting a rope around the Wang family of Beihai. Number 03 base in Beihai. This was a base that had only been reported in legends, and few people knew the exact location of this base. This was the nuclear experimental base of the Wang family of Beihai. At present, all the nuclear power stations, even military equipment, and even nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai were closely related to the number 03 base. There were too many possibilities for what it meant to completely incorporate the number 03 base into the system of Zhongzhou State. Are you sure? Bai Qingzhao slowly sat down and subconsciously lowered his voice. This is the best chance. Dongqing Wudi said calmly, we have to try. If things really reach the point of no return, then. Bai Qingzhao trembled subconsciously, and his face was a little pale. There is no such if. Dongqing Wudi smiled and said, we are not fools. We won't act recklessly. The phone suddenly rang. Dongqing Wudi took the phone and glanced at the number. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and his tense spirit seemed to relax in an instant. It's a call from Tianlan, he said cheerfully and picked up the call. Minister, I will go ashore in Longjiang by boat and go to Sai City by the way. Li Tianlan's low voice sounded. Dongqing Wudi froze for a moment and said subconsciously, things are not going well? After a long silence, Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said blankly, I don't know. He didn't know if things were going well. He fought through Beihai and climbed Mount Dibbing. Now, he didn't want to think about these things. Summer solstice promised me a lot of things. We'll talk about it in detail when we meet, he said slowly. Dongqing Wudi's face relaxed and he nodded. He knew the result of Li Tianlan's trip, so he naturally knew what he should do. What do you want from Zhongzhou State? I can operate it. He took the initiative to speak. Li Tianlan smiled. His voice seemed a little tired, but it was extremely stable. No need, he said. I don't have any requirements for Zhongzhou State. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a long time before he laughed and looked extremely happy. He nodded approvingly. This is the most correct thing to do. Can you tell me what you think? Nothing, Li Tianlan said quietly. I just think I should tell some people that I belong to Zhongzhou State, not the other way around. Chapter 665. Li Tianlan's voice was full of calmness and reason, as if he had thought about it for a long time. Dongqing Wudi's body relaxed completely. His eyes were happy, and he looked extremely gratified. Compared with Li Tianlan sweeping the entire Beihai province, he was more willing to see Li Tianlan's current choice. He had no requirements for Zhongzhou State. This approach was not only correct, it could even be said to be mature and wise. This was not a reversal of ideas, but a transformation of fundamental thinking. Dongqing Wudi didn't know if Li Tianlan was aware of this, but when he said this decision, Dongqing Wudi clearly noticed Li Tianlan's change. He was still moving forward on martial arts. He was invincible and had no retreat. But in the general trend, he had learned to give in. He gave in from the perspective of a superior. Not making any requirements for Zhongzhou State was a good move that amazed Dongqing Wudi. It was related to his bravery in Beihai. This advance and retreat were almost all the essence. Many benefits of everything today might be reflected for a long time. But giving up the immediate benefits that Zhongzhou State gave to East Emperor Palace was enough to show that Li Tianlan's vision was getting farther and farther. In the early morning light, the wind blew over the hillside and passed through Dongqing Wudi's white temples. He could hardly hide the smile on his lips. This was what he wanted. He wanted more than an invincible realm expert who could sweep everything. He wanted a real heir. Such a person should not only be invincible in force, but also have no shortcomings in all aspects. I support your decision. Without any hesitation, Dongqing Wudi expressed his attitude with a smile. Li Tianlan said no more, and quietly hung up the phone. How was it? Bai Qingzhao asked at once. Very good, Dongqing Wudi said with a smile. Qingzhao, how do you think Zhongzhou State should face a Tianlan who has no requirements? Bai Qingzhao froze and looked thoughtful. Dongqing Wudi turned to look at the rushing river and muttered to himself. I can't wait to see their reaction. Dongqing Wudi wanted to see the collective reaction of the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State. This morning, when many places around the world were still shrouded in darkness, countless people in the dark world saw the reaction of the Wang family of Beihai. The silver moon fell into Beihai. That day, the palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace did not go to the stage of formidable person. However, he left his mark on the stone of ambition forever. The Wang family of Beihai was silent. From beginning to end, in the face of great humiliation and Li Tianlan's aggressiveness, the Wang family of Beihai chose to compromise in the embarrassment that made onlookers uncomfortable. Even the fact that Li Tianlan never stepped into the stage of formidable person was not the Wang family of Beihai's role. It was because of Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. 3 hours after the battle on Mount Dibbing ended, the scene of the battle on the mountain had completely spread throughout the dark world. The Sword Emperor's era, which had lasted for decades, seemed to have completely passed from this moment onwards. Countless people began to quietly think about the plan for the Wang family of Beihai, in a mysterious and turbulent undercurrent. In Eastern Europe, the disciples who had been severely injured by the robbery were finally able to get out of bed and move. The disciples did not return to the European Holy Land with the Vatican. The tribulation on the night before the day of eradication had almost broken the sharpest blade of the Vatican. Arsis, an expert at the peak of the invincible realm who ranked third on the divine list, died. Thousands of the most elite saint warriors of the Vatican had suffered heavy casualties. The entire Vatican had ushered in a serious loss that had not occurred in decades. Its comprehensive strength could even be said to have been weakened by half overnight. The disciple who had exposed his identity and position stayed in Eastern Europe to recuperate. Now he was basically out of the order of the Vatican. The disciple had now been transferred to Recchi City and was quietly taken care of by an inconspicuous small family. Such a small family was not even close to the rich and powerful. At best, it could only be regarded as a relatively rich family. Because of this, such a family was not worth paying attention to at all. The disciple recuperated here quietly. Today, when Recchi City was still under full martial law, he was not even disturbed once. He quietly lurked in Recchi City, quietly recuperated, and coldly watched the various changes in the dark world. Only occasionally would he contact the extremely mysterious His Majesty. The result of Mount Dibbing spread throughout the dark world in the shortest time. That strange video almost followed the result and spread in the dark world. The devil troop Dijiang, the Wang family of Beihai, and countless elites who had attacked Zhuanyuantai all fell. Blood flowed like a river. Wang Yuetong pulled out a sword and stabbed herself in the heart. The picture was clear and stable. Li Tianlan in the video was strong and cold. This kind of horror had been well known with this video at this time. The disciple watched the video silently, over and over again. He picked up the mobile phone on the table and quietly thought about whether he should call His Majesty. The door was pushed open silently. Under the soft light, a figure who seemed to be shrouded in darkness and shadows came in. "Have you watched the video?" He glanced at the disciple and asked in a calm voice. The disciple's body stiffened in place. He stared at the figure who came in. The dark shadow seemed to linger around him, and everything around him seemed extremely vague. This was enough to show that the other party's control of power had reached an incredible level. Even the disciple who was close to the peak of the invincible realm could not see his face clearly for a while. But in the extremely blurry shadows, he finally saw a trace of a familiar silhouette. And this voice was even more familiar to him. The disciple almost jumped up all of a sudden. The violent movement affected his injury, and his face suddenly turned pale. He gave a muffled groan, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, but he became extremely excited. "Your Majesty?" His voice was high, but he tried his best to suppress it. "Your Majesty, is it you?" This was the first time he had seen the real body of His Majesty. It was a little vague, but it was extremely real. Before this, the disciple had only seen His Majesty once. But the His Majesty he saw was just a sword and tent of His Majesty. After that, the communication between the two was basically on the phone, or through the internet. But this time, this extremely vague figure made the disciple tremble slightly. He was sure that this was not a sword and tent of His Majesty. It was the real His Majesty. "Why are you so excited?" In the darkness, His Majesty's indifferent and soft low laugh rang out. "How are your injuries?" "Fortunately, I can recover soon." The disciple's suppressed voice became a little hoarse. His injuries were actually very serious. If he recovered to his heyday, it would take at least 2 or 3 years. But within half a year, he felt that he could recover at least 60% of his combat capability. Such combat capability was basically invincible in today's dark world, as long as he didn't meet Li Tianlan. The disciple thought and subconsciously looked at the video again. In the video, Li Tianlan raised his palm, so calm and so majestic. In the sword and tent, a large number of elites of the Wang family of Beihai, who rushed to Li Tianlan, were torn apart. The disciple's heart suddenly became more and more depressed. "It's wonderful." His Majesty was also enjoying the video. He was silent for a long time, and then slowly said, "The video is also very clear." The disciple was stunned and remembered what he had just thought. "Your Majesty, this video is a little strange." "Why?" His Majesty asked. "This is a battle that happened on Mount Dibbing, which is the base camp of the Wang family of Beihai. In fact, I'm a little surprised that the news spread so quickly. This video is obviously shot at close range. I don't think any force can lurk on Mount Dibbing at this time, even if Sword Emperor is not there," the disciple said. "Indeed." His Majesty nodded. So this video can't come from other forces. It's obviously shot by someone inside the Wang family of Beihai. There's nothing strange about it. Inside the Wang family of Beihai, the disciple was stunned and said reflexively, Wang Xiaoyao's man? Wang Xiaoyao? His Majesty's tone was a little playful. At that moment, he seemed to become a little strange. No. He shook his head. It should be Wang Qinglei. This is like a signal. Li Tianlan in the video is a foreign invasion, but this video represents the internal troubles of the Wang family of Beihai. Tut-tut, is the dignified Beihai going to be in chaos after all? His tone was a little complicated. The silver moon moves Beihai. Tut-tut, that's good. The disciple stood aside respectfully and didn't speak. We don't need to care about the Wang family of Beihai at this time. I'm afraid a lot of idiots will jump out eagerly. But in such a sensitive period of the game between Zhongzhou state and the Wang family, whoever stands out will die. His Majesty looked at the video and said, and they'll die in an ugly way. Then what about us? The disciple asked. We'll just focus on developing ourselves. His Majesty turned off the computer. Arrange it. I want to meet the Pope. When everything about Mount Dibbing was spread throughout the dark world in the form of videos, Wang Shengxiao, who was still in Fanio City, finally walked out of the pile of documents that could drown him. Since coming to Eastern Europe, Wang Xiaoyao, who seemed to have nothing to do but had everything under control, once again sat in front of Wang Shengxiao. There were no documents between them this time, only a flash drive with the video. What is it? Wang Shengxiao stared at the flash drive for a while and suddenly asked. Li Tianlan is in Mount Dibbing. Wang Xiaoyao yawned carelessly. This is a video. Do you want to have a look? Wang Shengxiao's body, which had been calm, seemed to shake for a moment. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's still laid-back expression, narrowed his eyes, and went straight to the point. Who shot it? Wang Xiaoyao glanced at Wang Shengxiao. Your man? Wang Shengxiao raised his eyebrows. No. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly. Is it Qinglei's man? I want this name. Wang Shengxiao was silent for a while and said slowly. His voice was flat and without any emotion, but it was extremely firm. Wang Xiaoyao did not say anything. Wang Shengxiao seemed to have lost his expectations and said with a poker face, What's the result? Dijiang lost. He lost miserably, but he broke through to the invincible realm. Yuetong was seriously injured in order to stop Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly, Li Tianlan didn't go to the stage of formidable person, but the silver moon sword in the 13th floor fell on the stone of formidable person. Wang Shengxiao listened to the deliberately simplified result, and was silent for a long time. In the silence he slowly stood up. The flash drive with the video was crushed by him. He walked to the window and looked at the night outside, silent for a long time. The silver moon moved Beihai. When the dark world was in an uproar, no one knew what the young man, who was nominally the first heir of the Wang family of Beihai, was thinking. Wang Xiaoyao quietly looked at his nephew's back, his eyes extremely quiet. Second uncle. After an unknown period of time, Wang Shengxiao suddenly shouted, Wang Xiaoyao responded. Wang Shengxiao turned his head and smiled. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's eyes and said calmly, I want to go back to Beihai. Now. Chapter 666. When night fell, Li Tianlan's figure finally approached the white snow that had been high up in the north of Zhongzhou state for many years. In the night, Mount Taibai was beautiful and holy. It was a solemn beauty. Li Tianlan stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the top for a long time before he slowly went up. He had been the young governor of Sai City for several years, but except for the time when he traveled thousands of miles, this was the first time he had officially set foot in Sai City, the city of assassins that shocked the whole dark world. White snow night mountain forest. In the cold and almost indifferent atmosphere, from every corner and in every direction, eyes gathered on Li Tianlan from time to time, and then quickly moved away. These were all secret sentries of Sai City. During the years of silence of the Li family, Sai City had always been aloof from the world within Zhongzhou state. Therefore there were not many core members in Sai City. Even with the peripheral members, The total number was very small compared to the reputation of Sai City. But these small number of secret sentries were cleverly distributed around Mount Taibai, and clearly grasped the movement of the whole mountain. There was almost no blind spot on Mount Taibai, where the eyes of countless secret sentries met. Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. He just walked up unhurriedly as if he didn't feel those hidden eyes in the dark. The news that he had come to Sai City seemed to have spread, but it was still silent on Mount Taibai. There was no greeting or cheering. It was unusually quiet. On the path on the mountainside stood a boulder nearly 20 meters high, which looked like a giant in the night. The words "military restricted zone" still reflected a clear light even in the night. In contrast, the words "Sai City" above the words were much more low-key. It was said that the 3 scarlet characters were personally written by Situt Songyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State. They were written in bold calligraphy, cold and sharp. The silence on the top of the mountain remained. Li Tianlan stood in front of the boulder and looked up at the stone tablet in front of him. After a long silence, he continued to climb the mountain. After passing the stone tablet, the snow on the mountain became thicker and thicker. It was all over the mountain, and the snow was dazzling. Li Tianlan's eyes grew calmer. All the battles in Beihai province seemed to have been suppressed in his heart the moment he left Beihai. Walking alone on the mountain road, all he could think about was Sai City. He thought of the support that Sai City had given him since he entered the secular world. He thought of Tribulation, who had been seriously injured and whose foundation had been completely destroyed. He thought of Sunset, who sacrificed herself for him in East Island. He thought of Deep Dream. He thought of Cool Breeze and Flowing Cloud. Sai City. Purgatory of Heaven Capital. Heaven Luo Hall. It was a different form of address. It was the same duty, the same position, and the same person. Sai City was the most mysterious Tianluo Hall in the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, and it had always been so. Li Tianlan breathed deeply. His figure was like a drifting shadow in the snow that covered the mountains, flickering, almost incorporeal, but his speed was surprisingly fast. It had only been a few days since Li Tianlan woke up in Yuzhou, but in the battle with Dijiang, his dual wind and thunder veins were completely restored, and they were even more powerful than before. Li Tianlan seemed calmer and calmer. His footsteps stepped on the snow as he reached the top of the mountain. In the silent world, he finally saw the first figure he had seen since he came up the mountain. Li Tianlan didn't know if this was a welcome. Deep Dream stood less than 50 meters in front of him. Mi's enemy. Under the night sky, her eyes were shining, filled with fanaticism. Young governor. In the silence, Deep Dream laughed, with undisguised joy in her tone. Welcome back. He was back. Not to welcome him to Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan's eyes warmed for a moment. He nodded and asked directly, "Where is the governor?" "Her Highness is accompanying the deputy governor." Deep Dream told the truth. "She already knew you came up the mountain. She asked me to wait here and take you there." Li Tianlan didn't say much, but simply said, "Lead the way." Deep Dream turned around and led Li Tianlan forward. Her figure followed Li Tianlan by half a step in a measured way, but she quietly led the way for Li Tianlan. "How many people are there in Sai City?" Li Tianlan walked quietly and suddenly asked. Deep Dream was stunned and whispered, "Including those on the periphery, there are about 2,000 people in Sai City, but there are less than 400 recorded." "Are they all killers?" Li Tianlan asked. If this was the case, Sai City was definitely a very terrible force. What did 400 well-trained professional killers mean? Perhaps in a large-scale war, the same number of killers was far less than the same number of soldiers. But in the dark, 400 professional killers were a nightmare for any force. On the scale of life and death, an assassin would always have an identity with infinite possibilities. Unlike martial arts, they did not even care about realms or battle prowess. For a true assassin, battle prowess was just a means to kill, nothing more. To kill, it was not necessary to rely on force. If there were really 400 professional killers, Li Tianlan's scalp tingled at the thought of that scene. If he stood on the opposite side of Sai City, not to mention the current Emperor Dong's palace, even if Emperor Dong's palace really surpassed the Wang family of Beihai in the future, He would suffer heavy losses in the face of hundreds of professional killers and scrupulous assassination. He might not be afraid of these, but he didn't know how many talents his Emperor Dong's palace would lose. Li Tianlan was lost in thought. That scene really had a trance power when he thought of it. No. Deep dream interrupted Li Tianlan's fantasy. There are only about 40 real killers in Sai City. That is, those who have reached our graduation level. Among them, Sure and 10 others haven't completed enough tasks. As for the others, some are trained here, and there are some talents in other fields. No matter how aloof Sai City is, it's still a force. To maintain its operation, it can't only rely on a group of killers. The gap was really a little big. Li Tianlan, who was still thinking about the destructive power of 400 professional killers a moment ago, felt a little helpless when he heard Deep Dream's number. He looked around and suddenly asked, "How many people are here now?" "Very few." Deep Dream shook her head. "But Governor has issued a summon order. Most people will return to Mount Taibai before noon tomorrow. You can see them tomorrow, young Governor." Li Tianlan was silent for a moment, nodded and repeated, "Tomorrow. Well, tomorrow." Deep Dream gave him a strange look, but didn't say anything. She took Li Tianlan to a small, shabby palace and whispered, "His Highness and Deputy Governor are inside." "I won't go in. Deputy Governor never lets us in." Li Tianlan answered and knocked on the door. "Come in. Situd Songyue is quiet." A voice rang out from within the palace. Deep Dream stood motionless outside the palace, but her eyes were fixed on the interior of the palace. She was a little curious and obviously wanted to know what was inside. Li Tianlan thought for a moment, then pushed the door open and walked in. The palace was very small. The interior decorations were ridiculously simple. The small palace only had 2 floors. However, the second floor was completely sealed off. There was only a bed in the living room and nothing else. The hall was empty. Only the hard bed was there. Li Tianlan didn't even see any sofas, tables, or chairs in the hall. There was not even a single light in the hall. Under the curtain of night, in the darkness, the palace was so quiet that it seemed like a deserted place. Li Tianlan stood in the darkness and was completely speechless for a while. An empty palace and a small bed. When all of this was combined together, it actually brought him an indescribable shock. This was Tribulation's residence in Sai City. He was the deputy governor of Sai City. Throughout the year, for many years, he spent most of his time in this palace. 1 year, 5 years, or even 10 years. Except for Situd Songyue, no one in Sai City had ever entered this palace, and no one would know what it looked like. It was like Tribulation's own world that he carefully guarded. It was empty, cold and dark. Li Tianlan didn't feel lonely in it, but he clearly felt a kind of silence, as if his heart was dead. In silence, Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward. In front of the hard bed, Situd Songyue, dressed in white, stood there motionless. Tribulation lay on the bed, breathing weakly and also motionless. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment, then broke the silence in front of him and whispered, "How is Marshal Uncle's injury?" "It's not getting better, nor is it getting worse." Situd Songyue sighed softly. "I really don't know when he will wake up." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and seemed to hesitate again. "What do you want to say?" Situd Songyue turned to look at him. The light in the palace was so dim that Li Tianlan couldn't see Situd Songyue's expression. "I'm thinking if I should take Marshal Uncle to Tiannan. In the Wang family of Beihai, the Nalan family will send someone to treat him. If Marshal Uncle is there, the possibility of recovery will be greater." Li Tianlan told the truth. "The Physician King family?" Situd Songyue raised her eyebrows. Li Tianlan nodded and said nothing. "Okay." Situd Songyue thought for a while and nodded. "I'll arrange it. I'll send him to Tiannan in a few days." "Okay." Li Tianlan nodded. "What do you think of Sai City?" Situd Songyue glanced at her brother lying on the bed again, sighed tiredly and asked casually. Li Tianlan walked to the bed in silence and looked at the silent snow outside the window. He didn't speak for a long time. Situd Songyue came over and looked at Li Tianlan's expression. Against the white snow, his expression looked a little gloomy but extremely calm. It was an indescribable depth. Situt Sungyue's eyes were in a trance for a moment and she asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about a question," Li Tianlan said. "I'm the young governor of Sai City, but is Sai City still my Sai City now?" Chapter 667. Since becoming the young governor of Sai City, Li Tianlan and Situt Sungyue had not seen each other many times. There were a lot of phone calls between them. Whether it was through video call or phone call, Li Tianlan was always reserved, quiet, and silent, with a little bit of unobvious but extremely sincere gratitude. No one expected that when Li Tianlan officially entered Sai City this time, there would be such a scene. Situt Sungyue didn't expect it either. "Sai City, is it my Sai City?" In the darkness, Li Tianlan's voice was calm, but Situt Sungyue could clearly feel the sharp power behind the calmness. This was definitely a sharp and somewhat domineering question. In the almost empty hall, tribulation lay there quietly. The darkness seemed to solidify, oppressive and heavy. Situt Sungyue looked at Li Tianlan's side face, and was silent for a long time. Now Li Tianlan was really different from before. She couldn't tell when the change began. Earlier, maybe it was the moment when he stood up again on Lonely Mountain after the final battle of Heaven Capital. Maybe it was the transformation of traveling thousands of miles in 3 years. Maybe it was the moment when he defeated Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hanshan, Jiang Shangyu, and Song Xiai together in the final maneuver. Or it was when the Snowdance Corps set foot in Eastern Europe under his leadership. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the Invincible Realm experts were crushed and killed by the general trend like nonentities. It was the moment when the eternal meteor in the sky above Mormons was completely extinguished. Or it was the moment when he swept all the way in Beihai and finally set foot on Mount Dibing. When did the change begin? Maybe the change had been going on all the time. However, Situt Sungyue ignored it. It seemed that everyone ignored it. On this day, Li Tianlan had been in the secular world for almost 4 years, but the time he stayed in the public eye was too little. His talent could be said to be astonishing, but his relatively weak strength always gave him a feeling of incomparable frailty when mixed in with the general trend. The Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, the Samsara Palace and Sai City, the final battle of Heaven Capital, the chaos of Eastern Europe. He had always been walking in the center of the general trend, but in the eye of the storm, there seemed to be a kind of power that had quietly shrouded him, causing his figure to become blurry. It was so blurry that he had almost left everyone's line of sight, so blurry that he did not even have much sense of existence. That kind of power was so subtle, yet it was everywhere. It was so careful, yet so affectionate. Situt Sungyue naturally knew where that kind of power came from, or who it came from. She was a piece of darkness, like the most mysterious veil. She had dragged Li Tianlan into the general trend where the wind and waves were the fiercest, but she had always firmly protected him, silently bearing all the shadows that wanted to devour Li Tianlan. Until the chaos in Eastern Europe. That sword strike had illuminated the entire world of darkness, ending this era that belonged to the Sword Emperor, which was filled with countless grievances. The veil that shrouded and protected Li Tianlan was completely broken with the shadows all over the sky. Li Tianlan walked out of the darkness and appeared clearly in everyone's sight. There were no longer any shadows in his sky. It was clear and boundless, bright and splendid. It seemed that Li Tianlan had appeared in everyone's sight for the first time. The heavenly light shone on the spirit-locking platform. The silver moon fell on the North Sea. He swept across Mount Dibing, swallowed thousands of miles, and was invincible. At this moment, the eyes of the whole world seemed to be focused on Li Tianlan. His figure was extremely dazzling in this era. This was his era. Situt Sungyue suddenly had some doubts. She didn't understand whether Li Tianlan, who was so clear now, had always been like this, or he had slowly become like this. He had become so proactive. He took the initiative to come to Mount Dibing and asked the sharpest question. At this moment, Situt Sungyue seemed to be able to feel Li Tianlan's mood. It was a kind of initiative that tried to grasp everything in his hands. He didn't want to passively endure anything anymore. He wanted to be in charge of everything. He became ambitious, sensitive, paranoid, and overbearing. Situt Sungyue thought quietly. In the silence, Li Tianlan had turned his eyes and his eyes fell on her face. Tianyi had told him about the structure of the purgatory of heaven capital when he was in Tongtian. This was a super force that had been secretly developed for many years. Its structure was extremely complete, and there were only 5 main and core institutions. Immortality, Immortality, and Sunluo had now completely appeared in front of the dark world. They represented the most terrifying combat capability and explosive power of the purgatory of heaven capital. And hidden in the dark was Heaven's Fall and Heaven's Fall. Heaven's Fall was the top assassination organization. Heaven's Fall was the most detailed intelligence organization. Heaven's Fall Temple was Sai City. In the sequence of the purgatory of heaven capital, Situt Songyue was the master of Heaven's Fall Temple. Tianyi once said that Heaven's Fall had been standing by Li Tianlan's side. But the purgatory of heaven capital had always been Li Guangtu's purgatory of heaven capital. And Situt Songyue was Li Guangtu's woman. Li Tianlan didn't want to doubt anything. He took the initiative to come to Sai City because he wanted to know Situt Songyue's attitude, as well as the attitude of the Heaven Fall Temple. As long as it was a clear attitude, any kind of attitude was okay. So he asked directly, was Sai City still his Sai City? Situt Songyue laughed. It was a kind of extremely clean beauty, without the traces of time, as clear as the snow on Mount Taibai. She reached out and touched Li Tianlan's hair, scratched his scalp, and said with a smile, "Little Tianlan, you came to Mount Taibai, but we didn't greet you with great fanfare. Are you angry?" Li Tianlan was stunned for a moment, and his face suddenly became extremely embarrassed. "You are the young governor of Sai City. Coming here means going home. Have you ever seen anyone who needs to be greeted by his family when he comes home?" Situt Songyue continued, "I didn't mean that." Li Tianlan took a deep breath, turned his head to look out of the window, and was silent for a long time. His expression gradually calmed down. Sai City Heaven Fall Temple. His voice was low and calm. Situt Songyue's body shook slightly for a moment, and she raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I am the young governor of Sai City. What am I to the Heaven Fall Temple?" he said slowly. "What am I to the entire purgatory of heaven capital?" Situt Songyue was silent for a long time. Then she sighed softly and did not speak. "I am grateful for what Sai City has done for me. I am grateful from the bottom of my heart," Li Tianlan whispered. "Auntie, I came here today to ask for an answer. Is Sai City mine or his? No matter what the answer is, I can accept it. Even if Sai City is not mine, we will not be enemies in the future." His. Li Tianlan didn't say who he was referring to, but Situt Songyue naturally knew. Situt Songyue smiled bitterly. She didn't want to answer such a question, and even instinctively resisted it. Her voice was a little helpless and she whispered, "Why do you have to make it so clear?" "The Li family is my Li family," Li Tianlan said. He said this sentence firmly and unquestionably. The Li family was stubborn. It was not only Li Guangtu who was stubborn. Now the Li family was his, and it didn't belong to anyone else. "It's his, and it's yours. Why do you do this? He is still recuperating in Yuzhou. When he wakes up, you can have a good talk. If the Li family is temporarily supported by him, you will be much more relaxed," and, before Situt Songyue finished her words, she had been interrupted by Li Tianlan. "There's nothing to talk about," he whispered. "I won't let him support the Li family, neither will Grandpa." "Why?" Situt Songyue asked. Li Tianlan looked at the snow outside the window. After a long silence, he said, "Because he doesn't deserve it." Li Tianlan, Li Guangtu, the Li family. In their eyes, they didn't deserve it. This sentence was as calm as he said it. He wanted to save Li Guangtu and Mormons. He destroyed Blue Sky Underworld and Falling Stars. He called the master of Samsara Palace a bitch, and Lin Fengting was even injured. All these were to save Li Guangtu. Because Li Guangtu's surname was Li. That was all. Situt Songyue couldn't say a word for a long time. He didn't deserve it. She quietly thought about it, and suddenly felt extremely sad. Li Tianlan said these 2 words very calmly, but behind that calmness, there was indeed a kind of calmness and indifference after suffering all kinds of grievances. Li Tianlan looked out of the window and whispered, "It's a beautiful place. I like it here." Situ Songyue smiled bitterly and didn't speak. Li Tianlan looked at her and waited for her answer. "The answer is actually the most boring thing," Situ Songyue said slowly. "But many answers are very important to me." Li Tianlan looked at Situ Songyue's face seriously. Situ Songyue was silent for a moment and said calmly, "I can't give you the answer you want, or even if I have the answer, it may not be what you want." Li Tianlan's heart sank for a moment, and he subconsciously glanced at tribulation in a coma. He didn't speak and waited quietly. "It's true that you are the young governor of Sai City," Situ Songyue said. "It's also true that he is the master of the purgatory of heaven capital. As for whether Sai City belongs to you or not, I can't answer this question," she said slowly. "You should go to Lin and ask Senior Li." Li Tianlan froze for a moment and suddenly remembered that he seemed to have not contacted his grandfather recently. Even when he swept the entire Beihai province, he did not receive a call from Linen. Situ Songyue didn't have the final say on the problem of Sai City. Li Honghe had the final say. This kind of answer was really boring. Li Tianlan was quiet for a moment. Just when Situ Songyue thought he had nothing to say, he suddenly said, "Auntie." Situ Songyue was a little confused. Li Tianlan turned his head and looked at her eyes seriously. The doubt in her eyes was genuine. "Do you have children?" Li Tianlan asked. Situ Songyue's eyes changed. She turned her head and said calmly, "No. I've actually checked a lot of information." Li Tianlan whispered, "My grandfather has a child, Li Kuangtu. I'm Grandpa's grandson." He whispered, "Li Kuangtu has had many women, but only 3 have been with him all the time. One is you, one is the Phantom Sword Master of Mount Shu, and the last one is Li Shi, who has been with him for the longest time. If my surname is really Li, I am the child of the Li family." He said slowly, "Li Kuangtu is my father." He looked at Situ Songyue and said, "You are not my mother, nor is Yun Qinshi." In Situ Songyue's slightly changed expression, his voice sounded, "My mother is Li Shi?" Chapter 668. Li Shi was Li Tianlan's mother. If that was the case, that was really a sad story. Many years ago, the Li family was brilliant. Many years ago, Li Kuangtu was high-spirited. Many years ago, Zhuan Yuantai was ambitious. Everything in that year, no matter how the Wang family of Beihai planned the treason case, no matter how insidious Kunlun City used, it was the sword that Li Shi stabbed into Li Kuangtu's chest that drew the final end to the treason case. The Li family fell from the clouds to the dust. This was a falling out between husband and wife. When the Li family declined, the purgatory of heaven capital was dormant, and Li Kuangtu was dormant. When Li Tianlan slowly walked up with the Li family on his back, it was the Samsara palace that helped him block the countless killing intents of the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Kuangtu thought that Li Tianlan was not worthy of owning the Li family. Li Tianlan thought so too. Even if this was not a father and son killing each other, at least it was a very dark beginning. At the last moment of the final battle of heaven capital, when Li Tianlan forced himself into the invincible sword light, the woman who stabbed him in the heart was Li Shi. Li Kuangtu, Li Shi, Li Tianlan. If this was really a family of 3, how dark would their past and future be? Situ Songyue looked at Li Tianlan in silence. She looked at him pitifully and sympathetically. Li Tianlan stood there quietly, and there was only a kind of indifferent silence in his eyes. "Is it true?" he asked. "I don't know." Situ Songyue told the truth. She really didn't know Li Tianlan's background. Perhaps many people knew that the Li family had a daughter who died young. But the problem was that no one had seen the child. No one knew if the child had really died. All the records of the hospital were erased. People knew that it was Li Shi's child. But whether it was a boy or a girl, whether it was alive or dead, or even how many children there were similar camouflage tricks in the dark world almost every year. Who knew what was going on except those involved? Perhaps only Li Shi, Li Kuangtu, and Li Honghe knew all this. Li Shi returned to Kunlun City and said that she had given birth to a daughter who had died young. With her strength at the peak of the invincible realm, her willingness to return was already loyal. How could Gu Xingyan ask anything else? Not to mention at that time, even now Li Shi was the top expert in Kunlun City. Although Situ Songyue had been secretly cooperating with Li Honghe, she had never asked about such a thing, and Li Honghe had never mentioned it. So he really didn't know. Li Tianlan remained silent. He did not know the real answer. But all the signs indicated that this seemed to be the only answer. In the past 3 generations of the Li family, Li Honghe only had one son, Li Guangtu. Li Honghe was his grandfather, so it was self-evident who his father was. For this reason, since he came back from Eastern Europe, he had never contacted Li Honghe except for making a phone call to Linen. Li Shi. Li Tianlan smiled. How miserable. He said softly. The corners of Situ Songyue's mouth moved, but she did not speak. Just like Li Tianlan. She didn't know Li Tianlan's background, but at this time, she couldn't think of any other possibility. There's nothing we can't face. Situ Songyue was silent for a long time, and then said softly, Tianlan, after all, we are a family. Many things, even if it involves life and death, may be misunderstandings. After going back and talking to them, many knots may be untied. Even if your speculation is true, there must be a reason for it to happen. The reason is not important. Li Tianlan shook his head. I don't need any explanation. It's not important. I can go to Beihai and anywhere else. He pointed his finger forward and said with a chuckle, Auntie, what do you think that is? Situ Songyue looked along his palm. Mount Taibai was extremely quiet. The wind and snow surrounded the night, and the summer stars hung in the sky. They stood on the top of the mountain and looked down. The snow, the night, and the stars. As far as the eye could see, there were endless lights. Situ Songyue was in a daze, and her heart was in a mess. She suddenly found that it had been many years since she stood in such a position to look at Mount Taibai and the distance. What is that? Situ Songyue asked in a mess. The world. Li Tianlan's pupils were like burning flames, with a temperature that was enough to burn everything. My world. I don't care what happened before, and I don't care about my background. I think about these questions just because I need to tell myself that no matter who my parents are, the Li family is mine. He said quietly, no one can take away my things. He patted the windowsill and whispered, this place is also mine. Situ Songyue did not give him an answer, but he gave himself an answer. Everyone thought that what they believed in was the truth. So did Li Tianlan. Situ Songyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Vaguely, she seemed to perceive Li Tianlan's purpose of coming here. How are your injuries? Li Tianlan turned to look at Situ Songyue and asked softly. Not bad. Situ Songyue whispered. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to recover my peak combat capability in a short time. After so many years, it's rare for me to rest and relax. Maybe I can make a breakthrough in martial arts if I relax my mind. A breakthrough. With Situ Songyue's current realm, if she made another breakthrough, she would be close to the peak of the invincible realm. I have a suggestion. Li Tianlan suddenly said. Situ Songyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Her eyes were extremely bright, as if she could see through Li Tianlan's heart. Go ahead. It was simple. Her voice was neither salty nor light. Li Tianlan turned his eyes away from Situ Songyue and said calmly, Auntie's injury is too serious, and Martial Uncle's injury can't be improved for the time being. After all, Mount Taibai is too cold. I want you to go to the south to recuperate for a period of time, and come back when your injury is better. The south. Situ Songyue tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan with a faint smile. The south. Li Tianlan nodded. Tiannan? Situ Songyue asked. There was no disappointment or anger in her tone, but some complexity. If Auntie thinks Tiannan is too far, Jiangzhe is also fine. Li Tianlan said calmly. Tiannan was the territory that Li Tianlan was about to open up. And Jiangzhe. Although Li Honghe was in charge of Jiangzhe, the powerful figure who really controlled the overall situation of Jiangzhe was Zhou Yuanshan, the governor of Jiangzhe. In other words, these two places were under Li Tianlan's absolute control. What this meant was self-evident. What about Sai City after I leave? Situ Tsungyue sighed softly. Her hunch was extremely accurate. Although she was not angry, she still felt a little self-deprecating. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. He still did not look at Situ Tsungyue, but said calmly, Sai City will be fine. One of cool breeze and drifting cloud can be transferred back. In addition, I will communicate with Saint. When I am in Tiannan, he will take care of Sai City. He was talking about Saint, not Wei Kunlun. Although the two identities it was just one person, but it had an unusual meaning. The latter was the sword master of Mount Shu. The former was the deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace. How long can Saint take care of it? Situ Tsungyue looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. A long time, Li Tianlan said quietly. His voice was steady, and his expression was calm. But at this moment, in the darkness, he gave people a feeling of extreme coldness. Enough to take care of Marshal Uncle's injury. Situ Tsungyue laughed. At this moment, she completely understood what Li Tianlan meant. If Wanjia's injury can't be healed, will I have to stay in the south for the rest of my life and never come back? Situ Tsungyue asked softly. Li Tianlan's hand grabbed the wooden windowsill. After a long time he said lightly, the weather in the south is very good. Situ Tsungyue did not say much. She was Li Guangtu's woman. Obviously, Li Tianlan did not trust her now. All the previous questions were just a foreshadowing. Li Tianlan already had his own plans in his heart. He was going to take her to the south. It was just a way of saying that she was under house arrest or recuperation. Now he was the young governor of Sai City. With her departure, the power of Sai City would naturally be concentrated in his hands. Li Tianlan came to Sai City for the power of Sai City. And he was not going to return the power that he had taken away to Situ Tsungyue. It was still the same sentence. Li Tianlan did not trust her. He trusted Tribulation. Therefore, after Tribulation's injury was healed, he would become the real governor of Sai City. Situ Tsungyue did not know whether Li Tianlan had planned to do this before he knew the truth about the Heaven Parish Hall. But obviously, after knowing that the Heaven Parish Hall was Sai City and the power of the Li family, Li Tianlan, who had always thought that the Li family belonged to him, no longer hesitated to do these things. If he didn't trust them, he would take them away. No matter who they were. Suspicious, sensitive, straightforward, decisive and cold. He was a real ambitious man. Situ Tsungyue's heart was a little complicated, but also indescribably gratified. Even if Li Tianlan was now clearly telling her that he was going to take away the power that belonged to her. I can listen to your arrangement, but you must know that I am different here than in the south. Situ Tsungyue said slowly. Even if I have no combat capability, not many people dare to act rashly here. But if I leave Tianlan, do you really understand the current situation? What do you mean, Auntie? Li Tianlan asked softly. Zhongzhou State and the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Tsungyue said calmly. It's not a good thing to be too independent. Li Tianlan's tone was indifferent. That's true. Situ Tsungyue said softly. But the Wang family of Beihai is used to being free. Who is willing to put shackles on their necks? So the next step must be the most intense game. Sai City in the north is the most important. Li Tianlan was silent. He suddenly remembered that at the beginning of the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Wang family of Beihai had obtained the military power of the Black Dragon Army located in the northeast in the deal with the giant group, and even obtained the leadership of the Longjiang province. Today's Longjiang province could be said to be the world of the Wang family of Beihai. Combined with the current situation, could it be that Wang Tianzong had prepared for the worst before the chaos in Eastern Europe officially began? After signing the Flying Bird Agreement, Snow Country is already the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Tsungyue reminded him. North, Snow Country, Longjiang, Black Dragon Army, Beihai Province. The instantly connected information lit up Li Tianlan's mind like a bolt of lightning. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked, do they dare? Chapter 669. Before everything officially started, no one could answer Li Tianlan's question. But for anyone involved in the game, this was a question that they had to start thinking about seriously. Games needed skills. The bigger the situation involved, the more skills and even the real wisdom were needed. Advance and retreat, balance, compromise, and countless subtle details were enough to affect the outcome of the game. Li Tianlan knew what Zhongzhou state wanted to do. He also knew what the Wang family of Beihai wanted to do in the face of Zhongzhou state's actions. The key was whether they dared to do it or not. Not only the Wang family of Beihai, it also included Zhongzhou state. Did Zhongzhou state dare to do it? Did the Wang family of Beihai dare to do it? When the two sides really competed, every advance and retreat was tantamount to testing each other's bottom line. This was destined to be a very complicated and incomparably long process. But Li Tianlan, who could roughly guess Wang Tianzong's injury, was very clear that Zhongzhou state now had plenty of time. So the most critical question was whether the Wang family of Beihai dared to do it or not. It depends on what Zhongzhou does. Situd Songyue thought for a long time and then said calmly. Li Tianlan was silent. No one thought there was anything wrong with the change of the speaker of Longjiang province at that time. At that time, everyone thought it was the Wang family of Beihai's weakening of Sai City. Who could have thought that at that time, Wang Tianzong had already prepared for this? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Do they have this strength? You can question anything. Situd Songyue said, but you absolutely can't question the strength of the Wang family of Beihai. Especially the comprehensive strength. This kind of super-rich family with hundreds of years of inheritance has experienced too many things. You alone swept Mount Dibbing, and even almost got on the stage of formidable person. Although it is a shame, it may not be a big deal. At least in these hundreds of years, this is certainly not the most difficult time for the Wang family of Beihai. Such a family can survive so many ups and downs. Their foundation can be said to be really unfathomable. In the past, no one who questioned the strength of the Wang family of Beihai would have a good end. She hesitated and slowly said, including Kuangtu in those days. How high-spirited was Li Kuangtu in those days? When victory was in his grasp, the Wang family of Beihai finally turned the tables. Perhaps many people did not like Li Kuangtu, but no one dared to say that he was a fool. He was scheming, ambitious, and ready to make trouble. He thought that he had seen through everything of the Wang family of Beihai. What was the result? It was the Li family that fell from the clouds to the dust. The Wang family of Beihai still stood at the top and could not be shaken. Li Kuangtu's failure might be due to his ambition, but it was definitely not due to his stupidity. He just didn't see the strength of the Wang family of Beihai clearly. They are indeed powerful. Li Tianlan nodded. He never denied it. The 200,000-strong army of the North Sea Legion was unstoppable. The thousands of people in the North Sea province were united. He still remembered that promise to His Majesty, Sword Emperor. But their strength might not be enough to support their actions. Don't forget how the North Sea province came to be, Situd Songyue said silently. Even if you grew up on the border, Boss Li should have told you about the history of Zhongzhou state, right? History of Zhongzhou state. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. During the hundreds of years since the founding of the People's Republic, the history of Zhongzhou state was extremely exciting. The Wang family of Beihai had been described in history books countless times about their strength and foundation. Even many influential events were directly related to them. How did the North Sea province come to be? The North Sea province had 150,000 square kilometers of land and was the youngest province in Zhongzhou state. The history of the North Sea province could even be said to be the most exciting part in the history of Zhongzhou state, at least one of the most exciting parts. It was a legend about the Chosen One. Holy State of Beihai, Queen City, Floating Island City, Liuli City. With the Kanglan River as the boundary, it was the northern end of the North Sea province today. Before the founding of Zhongzhou state, it was also the land of Zhongzhou state, but after the founding, it was occupied by Snow Country. The Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, who was still in the history books, united with the Rothschild family at that time, and used all means to take this land back from Snow Country, forming half of the Wang family of Beihai today. The land of the three cities south of the Kanglan River, Kanglan, Tongtian, and Qiushui still belonged to East Island during that time. During that period, the Wang family of Beihai, which had completely gained a foothold, could be said to really look down on the world. In their most glorious period, There was not only the chosen one ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, but also a brilliant figure whose combat capability was no weaker than his. That was the founder of Zhuanyuantai, and also Li Tianlan's founder. Those decades were incomparably glorious times. The light of the Wang family of Beihai shone on the whole dark world. The land that belonged to East Island was forcibly taken down by the two people, and formed the present Wang family of Beihai until today. It was also an era full of deceit and games. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai had to face Snow Country, East Island, Zhongzhou State, and countless forces. At that time, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai was not as good as it was now. But its high-end combat capability was far more than it was now. And most importantly, the current Wang family of Beihai did not need to face Snow Country. Their game with Zhongzhou State would be more naked. If the worst happens, what will the result be? Li Tianlan suddenly asked in a low voice. Who knows? Situd Songyue sighed softly, feeling a little tired. She looked at Li Tianlan and said, the task from the office of the president and the army headquarters should be coming soon. Whoever is here will take the task. Tianlan, are you sure you want me to go south? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, and a touch of sharpness flashed through his eyes. Now the Wang family of Beihai had basically controlled the overall situation of Longjiang base city. Longjiang and Beihai faced each other across the sea. Now that the Black Dragon army was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai, the barrier of Longjiang province was in the hands of Beihai province. It was not until this moment that Li Tianlan understood why the Black Dragon army, which had been brought to Eastern Europe by Dongqing Wudi, had not returned home. It wasn't that the warriors of the Black Dragon army weren't trusted. It was because some of the leaders of the Black Dragon army had changed their stance. Had the situation become so sensitive? Li Tianlan thought silently. The current situation could even be said to be on the verge of breaking out. Him sweeping through the North Sea province was a clear signal. Zhongzhou State's action against Beihai would begin soon. No one would think of destroying Beihai, but as the world's most powerful country, in the face of the Wang family of Beihai's repeated criticism, even if it was unconsciously, they could not tolerate it. Now with this opportunity, Zhongzhou State would definitely take action to weaken the autonomy and independence of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai province was a province, and could only be a province. Not the Beihai family. Nor was it a certain country. Undoubtedly, the Wang family of Beihai could not tolerate such a situation. They would fight and play, but Zhongzhou State was powerful. If Beihai really couldn't stand it, what would they do? Would they grit their teeth and compromise? Or would they grit their teeth and resist? Zhongzhou State was afraid of the Wang family of Beihai's resistance. And the Wang family of Beihai also knew that their final resistance was their biggest trump card. Longjiang was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Liaodong, where Sai City was located, was connected to Longjiang and Snow Country. Snow Country had now become a puppet in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Once the Wang family of Beihai really went crazy, more than 200,000 troops of the Beihai Corps would sweep through the Longjiang province and enter Liaodong in an instant. If Snow Country was willing to cooperate, it could completely destroy Sai City, join with the Beihai Corps, and sweep through Guangdong from Liaodong. How large was the area of the three northeastern provinces? It was 800,000 square kilometers. It was as large as several Beihai, larger than the land area of most countries in the world. Once the Wang family of Beihai fell out with Zhongzhou State, they could even establish a country after controlling the three northeastern provinces. And it would be a real, veritable big country. Zhongzhou State could not allow such a thing. But the Wang family of Beihai also had a trump card. Zhongzhou State was a country with nuclear weapons. And as a part of Zhongzhou State, the Wang family of Beihai was also a province with nuclear weapons. And nuclear weapons were under the control of the Wang family of Beihai. The number of nuclear weapons in Beihai might not be enough to destroy the world, but if it was really a life and death struggle, it was enough to destroy most of the territory of Zhongzhou State. Corpses were everywhere, blood flowed like a river, and it was a purgatory on earth. Everyone could clearly see this problem. So such a game was destined to be extremely dangerous. Neither Zhongzhou State nor Beihai wanted to go to this step. This also doomed this game to be a long time. But in difficult times, Zhongzhou State also had to fight. Especially when Zhongzhou State clearly felt this kind of danger, Zhongzhou State had to go up to control the nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai. This was the bottom line of Zhongzhou State. But on the other hand, this was also the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai. In such a situation, in order to avoid the worst result, Sai City, with its special position, was bound to bear an unimaginable burden. Such a Sai City had even become a place of contention for military power. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and whispered, "If this is the case, you and Marshal Uncle shouldn't stay here." Situd Songyue was stunned. "Go to the south," Li Tianlan said. Situd Songyue's eyes quietly warmed for a moment. When she proposed to go to the south before, it was because Li Tianlan didn't trust her. But now he proposed it because he cared about her. Situd Songyue smiled and whispered, "Okay." She paused and continued, "But you can't be careless. It's hard for Wanjie to recover from his injury, and Saint can't stay in Sai City. If you are in Tiannan, how should Sai City deal with itself? You should think about it. If the Wang family of Beihai goes crazy and this place becomes a breakthrough, the future of the Li family, it's okay." Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said quietly, "Even if Marshal Uncle can't recover for the time being, even if you and Saint are not here, even if I am in Tiannan, Sai City is still invincible." In the dark, Li Tianlan stretched out his palm. An incomparably dazzling and resplendent rainbow light suddenly bloomed from his palm. The sword intent all over the sky rolled up the flying snow outside the window in an instant, extremely messy. Situd Songyue tightened her body completely out of instinct. Her eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan's palm. A small sword with a brilliant color and an incomparably exquisite and perfect shape spun continuously in his hand. Indifferent, proud, and awe-inspiring. At this moment, Li Tianlan almost had no sense of existence. But this spinning little sword brought Situd Songyue a kind of unparalleled danger. Li Tianlan's palm moved. The little sword spinning in his palm rose in an instant, bringing up flying snow all over the sky. The shining sword energy of thousands of meters tore the night sky. It was like a long rainbow. The dazzling sword light crossed the whole Sai City, kept flying, and finally landed at the end of Sai City. It stood straight in the snow, facing the direction of Snow Country, becoming more and more quiet and proud. This is the startling sword. It will protect Sai City and the north end of Zhongzhou State on our behalf. Li Tianlan said. The 13th floor. Startling sword. Situd Songyue looked at him quietly, her eyes extremely complicated. At this moment, her mind was full of the words that Deep Dream brought to her after returning from Yuzhou. The silver moonlight moved Beihai. Startling sword shone on Zhongzhou State. She didn't expect that the first sword of the second sentence would land here. The most suitable place. Chapter 670. At dusk, Qin Weibai sent off the last group of guests of Prince Yang's mansion with a smile, and elegantly gathered the hair on her forehead. She wore a dignified and simple light-colored cheongsam, and her once loose black hair was tied into a ponytail. She stood in front of the gate of the ancient prince's mansion without any makeup, facing the approaching dusk. She was indifferent, but with an indescribable beauty and holiness. That touch of white, which had once filled the dark world, was aloof, cold, and powerful. Now it seemed that she really came to the world for the first time. Because she was willing, the mystery began to disappear little by little, but the calm and even wise temperament became more and more perfect. She just stood there. She was graceful, quiet and calm, elegant and delicate and calm. She had skin of ice and bones of jade, a fairy-like appearance, and was extremely beautiful and peerless. From inside to outside, she had no shortcomings. The afterglow of the setting sun devoured the remaining light between heaven and earth. Less than 10 meters behind Qin Weibai, Flaming Fire stood there, looking at the perfect back with extremely cold eyes. Flaming Fire woke up yesterday, when Li Tianlan officially left Beihai and entered Liaodong from Longjiang to Sai City. Her extremely weak breath was actually not seriously injured. It could even be said that she was one of the least injured invincible realm experts in the chaos of Eastern Europe. As many outsiders guessed, Flaming Fire just woke up and went to Qin Weibai's side. Although she didn't have much combat power for the time being, her attitude seemed to have fully demonstrated that she was still loyal to Qin Weibai. But no one knew that Flaming Fire had never said a word to Qin Weibai since she came to her side. The dim yellow light in the sky gradually disappeared. At the moment when day and night alternated, a gust of wind blew over Prince Yang's mansion. The autumn wind went all the way north, rolling up the flowers, plants, and green leaves in the prince's mansion. Flaming Fire raised her head and glanced at it expressionlessly. The space was twisting and deforming quietly. All the way forward, she passed by Flaming Fire without most people in the prince's mansion noticing. The autumn wind between heaven and earth stopped beside Flaming Fire for a moment. Flaming Fire nodded indifferently. As if she had said hello, the autumn wind gradually dissipated, leaving no trace. Qin Weibai turned around and happened to see Flaming Fire nodding. She smiled and took the initiative to say, "Is he here?" Flaming Fire glanced at her and nodded, then closed the door. Qin Weibai's voice was soft and unhurried, with a hint of exhaustion. "I won't be seeing any guests today." The Prince of Yang's residence had guests every day. From the day Li Tianlan destroyed the Tang family in Yuzhou, but Zhongzhou state remained silent. The first group of guests came to visit. Heavenly Light Spirit Lock Platform. More and more people came to the Prince of Yang's residence, and their statuses grew higher and higher. It had only been 2 days since Li Tianlan left Mount Dibing, and the people who came to Prince Yang's mansion almost had to line up. It was impossible for them not to know that they couldn't see Li Tianlan here. But they all scrambled to come here to show their attitude, and at the same time, brought valuable gifts. It was impossible for her to satisfy everyone, but she tried her best not to disappoint them. Her methods were calm and natural. It was the first time for most people to see this famous goddess. She was not cold and aloof, nor was she arrogant and detached from the crowd. Her every move could be said to be impeccable. Although everyone who left did not get the promise Qin Weibai made on behalf of Li Tianlan, most of them gained something. As more and more people came to visit, Qin Weibai's name gradually spread, so more uneasy people began to come to visit her. In just a few days' time, Qin Weibai's name had been spread out, so more people began to visit her with uneasiness. In just a few days, many people already knew that Prince Yang's mansion had a beautiful but good-tempered hostess who was easy to get along with. Flaming Fire witnessed all this in one day. Her eyes were getting colder and colder. Seeing that Qin Weibai was about to close the door, she suddenly said, "Don't close the door." The decision that had been hesitating for a long time seemed to become clear and certain at this moment. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm leaving." Qin Weibai was stunned and looked at Flaming Fire. She was silent for a while, then chuckled. "Isn't it good to stay with me? I don't want to be a shadow anymore," Flaming Fire said quietly. "And I can't keep up with your pace." "It's the same," Qin Weibai said calmly. "It's the same." "It's not the same." Flaming Fire's voice was full of persistence. "You know it yourself. It's obviously the same." Qin Weibai's voice was also full of persistence. Flaming Fire did not speak. This question was actually meaningless. Whether it was the same or not, in her heart it was different. Then it was different. "I'm leaving," she said. In fact, she could have left Yuzhou when she had just woken up. However, coming here first and then leaving was completely different from leaving without saying goodbye. Coming here first and then leaving, at least Qin Weibai could have an explanation to the outside world. As long as Flaming Fire did not deny it, this explanation was true. Flaming Fire did not want to deny anything. She did not care what others thought. She only cared about one thing. That was different. He was truly different. Flaming Fire raised her head and looked at the lights under the night sky. Suddenly, she felt that the whole world was so strange. It was as if she had lost her pillar. She lost her direction and felt a little lonely. Qin Weibai's voice rang out. "Where are you going?" Flaming Fire was silent for a long time. After all, she still remembered a lot of things. She remembered that she often got up early to collect morning dew for her boss. She remembered the coffee she made for her boss in the middle of the night. She remembered the fruit she cut for her boss. She remembered the two of them flying all over the world. They met different people and encountered different dangers. She remembered the first time they met. She remembered that she told her about Li Tianlan with a smile. She talked about destiny and the past, but she did not talk about the future. There was no future. There would be no more. Flaming Fire's eyes were red. The suffocating pain in her heart twisted, with a kind of tearing feeling. She said it was the same. Maybe it was the same. But how could it be the same? In the night, Flaming Fire quickly raised her hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Go to Northern Europe." Most of the time, she was Flaming Fire. Most of the time, she was also the master of Samsara Palace. No matter who she was, when the pillar in her heart collapsed, she finally remembered Northern Europe. In that chaos, there was a man who had silently loved her for many years. The man was willing to throw out the murderous weapon to protect Li Tianlan for the will of herself and Samsara Palace. And he was seriously injured. Northern Europe was now in turmoil. The dark nights were surging with undercurrents. Flaming Fire felt that it was necessary to sort out his dark nights for him when she lost her direction. She walked out of the door and looked back at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai stood inside the door, surrounded by a flourishing field of flowers and plants. The light of the street lamps outside the prince's mansion fell on Flaming Fire. It seemed warm, but it was extremely cold. The inside and outside the door seemed to be separated into two worlds by the bleak autumn. It was the past and the future, or something else. "Goodbye," Flaming Fire said softly. Her voice paused, and then she said, "It's better not to see you again. You know why the guests come these days, and you know why there are so many guests today." Qin Weibai said, "Because Tianlan fought through the whole Beihai. In this era he is almost invincible. Because of Emperor Dong's palace, because Wei Kunlun, a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou state, is the palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, and because of you, you are also an invincible realm expert. Now in everyone's mind, there are 3 invincible realm experts in Emperor Dong's palace. You stay, and we will strengthen Emperor Dong's palace together. Isn't it good?" "Maybe it's good." Flaming Fire was silent for a long time, and then she said softly, "But after that sword move in Eastern Europe, all this has nothing to do with me." Qin Weibai's eyes calmed down, becoming deep and bright. She asked her to stay. Flaming Fire refused. This was the truth. The truth could not be changed. So she nodded. "So then goodbye." "Anyway," she laughed. "You are a very good assistant, no, the best assistant. Thank you for taking care of me." Flaming Fire's eyes suddenly became cold, and even a little angry. "I don't need your thanks." She stared into Qin Weibai's eyes and said word by word, "There's no difference." Qin Weibai sighed softly and looked at Flaming Fire. There was understanding, sympathy, and a trace of sadness in her eyes. "You know better than anyone that it's the same, exactly the same." "Is it the same?" Flaming Fire's eyes became excited. She tried to smile, but it was extremely cold and even a little sad. "You always think it's the same? So you can enjoy that fool's love and care for you with a clear conscience. Enjoy everything in the future, command military counselor and saint with a clear conscience. Be yourself with a clear conscience, and even say thank you to me with a clear conscience." Qin Weibai looked at her quietly for a long time. Flaming Fire stood there straight, looking at Qin Weibai, and persistently waiting for her answer. Her answer was so powerful and so true, but for Flaming Fire, it was so heartbreaking. "It all belongs to me. Why can't I feel at ease?" Qin Weibai asked. This was her answer. Flaming Fire could not refute anything. Therefore, she could only stand there and keep sneering. She remembered a lot of things. Memories were like knives, cutting everything in the past with the cruelest strength and indifference. All the past was fragmented. It was all hers. Why couldn't she feel at ease? What was she obsessed with? It all belonged to her. Maybe I haven't done well enough. I can accept questions from any aspect. Even if you are in Northern Europe, you can also question what I will do next. Qin Weibai whispered. But there is one thing that none of you can question me. She looked at Flaming Fire proudly, cold and strong. Flawless. What belongs to me is mine. This is a fact. You can't question it. She looked at Flaming Fire and whispered, "Because you are not qualified." Climax. Chapter 671. The autumn wind in the twilight blew through the mansion and opened the antique door of the main hall of the mansion. Wisps of sword chi that did not seem strong but were extremely dense spread out in the main hall, silently covering the entire path from the main hall to the prince's mansion. In the main hall, Saint, who was meditating, opened his eyes. Looking at the autumn wind in the darkness, he nodded. His sword intent was still extending forward, gentle but incomparably resolute. "You don't trust her?" A light and gentle voice suddenly sounded in the autumn wind. The space, which had been wrinkled by the wind, became calm again. Military counselor, who was dressed in black, walked out of the darkness and walked to the bedside. The window beside the bed was half closed. Through a small gap, military counselor stood there, looking at the blurry figures of Qin Weibai and Flaming Fire in the distance. This scene was a little wretched, but military counselor was watching with great concentration. "Who?" Saint asked. It was not that he knew the answer, but he really did not know who the military counselor was asking about. Military counselor was silent for a while. He did not seem to know who he was referring to. After a long time, Flaming Fire walked out of the gate of the mansion. "Flaming Fire is trustworthy," military counselor said slowly, his voice a little complicated. "Of course I know that." Saint laughed at himself and said, "But now she is courting death. Even if Flaming Fire is trustworthy, it is inevitable that she will be impulsive. If she really takes action, she really doesn't know martial arts." Military counselor did not speak. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Samsara Palace could be said to have been completely destroyed. Less than 1/10 of the combatants survived. Most of them died in the strangulation of Mormons. More than half of the 12 supermasters died, and so did the master of the Samsara Palace. Now in their small group, perhaps only military counselor could really understand Flaming Fire's feelings, because they were the ones who would never betray him. "Flaming Fire wants to leave. What do you think?" Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was a little surprised. "Did she contact you? What's the connection between something that's already destined?" Military counselor shook his head. "Do you really think she can stay here now?" Saint was silent for a long time before he said slowly, "It's good that he left. The outside world won't know this news for the time being. Flaming Fire will cooperate with our publicity. For a short time, just treat her as an invincible realm expert hiding in the dark," military counselor said. Saint nodded in acknowledgement. "How's your realm?" military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was stunned for a moment and then said, "No problem." In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the general trend was intertwined. In that chaotic situation, the breakthrough of Saint was actually very urgent, but he had accumulated enough experience over the years, so his breakthrough could be said to be natural. Now, as long as he could stabilize his realm, he could go all the way up in the shortest time possible. His real combat capability could even catch up with the peak of the invincible realm. Dongqing Huangtu's notebook did give him great inspiration. The sword energy of the current Nirvana Sword Master was thicker than before. It could be said that it had already surpassed the swordsmanship of Mount Shu. But the only problem was that it also took time to completely stabilize the realm of the invincible realm. The saints didn't know how long they would need, but at least for now, they didn't lack time. In the darkness, Flaming Fire's somewhat excited question came faintly along with the night wind. Military counselor and Saint stopped talking. He did not show himself either. Both of them just quietly observed the confrontation between Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's voice was calm and composed, just as Flaming Fire said. He felt at ease. They heard Qin Weibai's final answer. "You don't have the qualifications." The two of them were speechless. Flaming Fire was also speechless. In the long silence, Flaming Fire didn't say anything. She slowly turned around and slowly disappeared outside the door of the prince's mansion, under the cold autumn light. Qin Weibai stood there alone, but she looked more and more perfect and firm. "She's right," Saint suddenly said. "We're not qualified. And it's always the same. Military counselor stood in front of the window and watched Qin Weibai turn around and walk over. He remained silent and did not speak. The ubiquitous sword intent in the prince's mansion slowly disappeared. Qin Weibai walked in steadily. Her expression didn't change at all. Her calm aura was drowned in the darkness the moment she entered the door. She frowned slightly. "Brighten up," she said slowly. Military counselor, who showed his true face, was here. Naturally, the lights in the main hall couldn't be turned on. Saint gently flicked his fingers, and a clear sword light lit up in the darkness. The faint light illuminated a small area. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa in the middle of the light. After a moment of silence, she asked, "What's the matter? What's your plan for the future of Tianlan?" Military counselor asked casually after a moment of silence. Qin Weibai glanced at military counselor coldly and said calmly, "Don't test me. Tianlan doesn't need any arrangement for the future. We should all remember our positions. I'm his woman. You're his subordinates. We're not qualified to arrange anything for him. We're by his side. In the future, we'll follow him. That's all. Don't you understand this?" Military counselor took a deep breath and smiled. "I understand. But there are still some things that need to be said." The Wang family of Beihai today. Do you have any idea about Wang Tianzong's injury? Military counselor asked. Qin Weibai really didn't understand martial arts. But to some extent, she could be said to be the person who knew the sword move in Eastern Europe the best. Knowing that sword move, she should be able to roughly judge Wang Tianzong's injury. Qin Weibai thought about it seriously and said hesitantly, "If there's no accident, his injury can't recover in 3 to 5 years. This is the best situation." The worst situation was needless to say. Either Wang Tianzong died directly or his injury would be difficult to heal for the rest of his life. 3 to 5 years, military counselor murmured to himself. "Have you heard any rumors?" Saint suddenly asked. With the current position of the Wang family of Beihai and some of the things they did in Eastern Europe, there were indeed some rumors in the high level of Zhongzhou state, but it was hard to know whether they were true or not. From this aspect, it seemed that Zhongzhou state could not make up its mind. Rumors? Military counselor laughed. "Today, I've received calls from 9 council members, and they're all talking about the same thing. Is this considered a rumor?" Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes. Saint's face changed slightly. There were only 9 council members in the Zhongzhou state parliament. They could be said to be the real giants with the most power and strength in Zhongzhou state, representing the will of the entire Zhongzhou state. Within one day, all 9 giants called military counselor? What did this mean? Including those in the southeast? Saint frowned and asked calmly. "Of course." Military counselor nodded. He paused and continued, "Including summer solstice." Qin Weibai rubbed her white forehead and said softly, "What's the position of those in the southeast?" "Of course it's the position of the southeast," military counselor said blandly. "Although there are problems inside the Wang family of Beihai, in this respect, their cohesion is still extraordinary. Their cohesiveness is extraordinary, and they all hope to get my support. Of course, their words won't be so obvious, but their intentions are there." Qin Weibai and Saint looked at each other and did not speak. Military counselor's public identity and relationship with the Wang family of Beihai could be said to be very good. Although they were not strategic partners, several times of cooperation between them had always been quite pleasant. If military counselor was not military counselor and really chose to support the Wang family of Beihai, it was enough to make the entire Zhongzhou state restless and even afraid to take action. Those council members in the southeast hoped military counselor to support the Wang family of Beihai, and the council members of several other groups also called military counselor on the same day, naturally to test military counselor's attitude. The game between Zhongzhou state and the Wang family of Beihai might be extremely tragic, or it might be light. But in any case, before the official start, both Zhongzhou state and the Wang family of Beihai hoped to win the support of a few super heavyweight top figures with extraordinary status. Military counselor was naturally one of them, and it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the most important one. There was no doubt that military counselor saw an opportunity. Support Zhongzhou state, support Beihai, or be neutral. No matter what kind of attitude, with careful planning, it was promising. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, it was obvious that military counselors still wanted to seize this opportunity to set off a general trend similar to the chaos in Eastern Europe, or the final battle of Heaven Capital. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, with their current strength, it was not impossible. Now they needed to discuss how to operate, and what they could get in the end. Qin Weibai pondered and did not speak for a long time. What ideas do you have? Saint suddenly asked. If military counselor did not have enough ability, it would be too unworthy of his code name. Moreover, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, Saint became the sword master of Mount Shu and appeared in everyone's sight. Qin Weibai came to Li Tianlan's side. On the contrary, military counselor controlled most of their remaining or deliberately protected forces. He was a steady man. If he did not have a general idea, it was impossible for him to come to them and tell them these things. We can push it behind the scenes. Military counselor said slowly. I told Tianlan more than 3 years ago that the whole world is looking for the headquarters of Samsara Palace, but no one knows that the real headquarters of Samsara Palace is in Zhongzhou State. He said slowly. Obviously, he was also thinking carefully. At present, the power in my hands is enough. Do you want to flip the cards? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Samsara Palace still had countless trump cards in Zhongzhou State, big and small, densely packed. Only military counselor, who was absolutely trusted by the master of Samsara Palace, could hold all these trump cards in his hands and operate them in an orderly manner. Once these cards were flipped, it was enough to set off an unimaginable storm inside Zhongzhou State. Yes. Military counselor's voice was very calm. It's too early. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. Tell me your reason. I'm tired. Military counselor smiled. If these cards are flipped, it will be enough for the Li family to have the influence of its peak in an instant. I don't think it's too early now. Qin Weibai was silent. He was tired. This was the reason given by military counselor. She did not know whether such a reason was true or not, but it did not matter. The most important thing was that even if it was true, the reason why he was tired was that there was one less person. Just like Flaming Fire wanted to leave. Military counselor and Flaming Fire. They were both tired. In other words, no matter how persistent they were, no matter how real they were, in their hearts, after all, it was still different. It was really different. That was why they felt tired. Chapter 672. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa. Saint's sword radiance emitted a faint light, illuminating a small piece of darkness. She bathed in the light and was lost in thought for a long time. It seemed that she had not been as powerless as she was now for many years. Since the establishment of Samsara Palace, it had been an organization with a strong purpose. It could even be said to be an organization with only one purpose. From the beginning to the end, what everyone in Samsara Palace tried to do was to create a sky without shadows. All the plans, all the calculations, and a large number of trump cards came to an end in Mormon's eternal sword. Samsara Palace collapsed. After that, the plan was blank. But even so, Samsara Palace still had a lot of power that had not been exposed, and was controlled by military counselor. It didn't need a plan. Everyone knew that once military counselor used these trump cards, the Li family supported by them could definitely become the top force in Zhongzhou State in an instant, and even recover to its peak glory. But there was a premise for all this. Such power was the power in military counselor's hands, and the power of Samsara Palace. But this was not the power of the Li family. Li Tianlan firmly believed that the Li family was his. The remaining small group of Samsara Palace also firmly believed in this. But those trump cards had been buried for too long, so there were countless variables hidden inside. How to smoothly transfer this power to Li Tianlan's hands, and let them really accept Li Tianlan and the Li family's leadership was the question that military counselor should think about most now. And how far Li Tianlan could go also depended on his future achievements and development. So Qin Weibai felt that it was still too early. Li Tianlan had not yet broken through to the invincible realm. He had the combat capability of the invincible realm, But his real combat capability had surpassed the ordinary invincible realm experts. With the dragon vein, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, the dragon vein on his back had completely recovered. Zhongzhou state was thriving, and Li Tianlan was making progress almost all the time. The sword formation of the 13-story buildings had almost integrated with him. Under such circumstances, no one knew how terrible Li Tianlan would be in the future. Who dared to guess what Li Tianlan would do in 3 years? What would happen in 5 years? This was what Qin Weibai had been looking forward to the most. This shadowless sky completely belonged to Li Tianlan. No force could put pressure on him or suppress him. The foundation of the emperor in Tiannan had begun to take shape. The right time, place, and people were all in place. This is destined to be the fastest development of Emperor Dong's palace. It was the craziest few years of the world. 3 to 5 years later, both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace would become extremely powerful. In Qin Weibai's expectation, that would also be the most appropriate time. Both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace had made convincing achievements. Military counselor revealed all the trump cards in his hands and sent the Li family back to its former peak. In the face of the incomparably powerful Li Tianlan, those hidden trump cards naturally knew how to choose. But now, the military counselor felt that it was time. Obviously, he wanted to take advantage of Li Tianlan's attack on the entire Beihai to use his power to set off a storm that was extremely favorable to the Li family in the game between Zhongzhou state and Beihai. Such a plan might not be considered hasty, but the timing was not perfect. It was impossible for the military counselor not to know this. But his reason was simple and powerful. He was tired. This was also the reason that made Qin Weibai feel the most powerless. To some extent, military counselor and flaming fire were the same. They might not be tired, but after the sword stroke in Eastern Europe, they had lost their direction. Qin Weibai could not stop flaming fire. She could not stop military counselor either. Just as she said to flaming fire, no one was qualified to question her. But she was also not qualified to restrain them. She fully understood this feeling. It was probably the feeling of being disheartened. Qin Weibai also felt a little disheartened. She felt that everything was the same. This feeling was extremely real and rational. Nothing could deny it. But both flaming fire and military counselor felt that it was different. This was their own insistence. Do you not recognize me or Tianlan? Qin Weibai asked. There was no need to ask this question. The tragic ending of Samsara Palace today was all because of Li Tianlan. But this was something that was destined when Samsara Palace was established. This kind of unequal thing, at least in their hearts, was nothing. Everyone felt that Li Tianlan's growth and future were worthy of Samsara Palace's efforts. Otherwise, Saint would not have joined Samsara Palace and become a deputy palace master. You think too much. Military counselor's voice was very sincere. His attitude was not as intense as flaming fire's, but it was also extremely firm. These years, I'm really a little tired. In fact, a long time ago, I thought about the days after retirement. That's the day I've always longed for. These things at present can be said to be my last task. It's unnecessary. Everything in my hands will be handed over to Tianlan. I will handle this matter well. How are you going to make use of this opportunity? Saint asked. The upcoming game between Zhongzhou state and Beihai was destined to involve the overall situation. Being in the game, this was an opportunity for everyone. Would the 800,000 square kilometers of territory in the northeast become the real foundation for the Wang family of Beihai to flourish? Or would it become the springboard for Zhongzhou state to completely take over Beihai province? This was bound to be a question that everyone would pay close attention to. At this moment, a person suddenly came to Saint's mind. Dongcheng Wudi's wife, Bai Qinqian. She was transferred from Qinzhou to Liaodong more than 3 years ago to serve as the speaker of Liaodong. And that was shortly after Qin Weibai contacted the Dongcheng clan. So was this move the Samsara Palace's foresight or the Dongcheng clan's foresight? Longjiang, Liaodong Guangdong. When the Wang family of Beihai occupied the general trend of Longjiang, once the chaos broke out, Liaodong would be the first to bear the brunt. How would the military counselor make use of this opportunity? I think it won't be long before the higher-ups of Zhongzhou State send out a clear signal. Beihai and Zhongzhou State, such a game can't have a winner or loser in a short time. Once the game starts, there are opportunities everywhere. We should find the most suitable entry point for us now. Military counselor said slowly. Qin Weibai's mind was in a mess. She didn't think much about it and said subconsciously, the game hasn't started yet. How would you know what the entry point is? Military counselor and Saint looked at her at the same time. We don't know. Military counselor answered her question. But this game is like a point that leads to different endings. This is something that is destined to happen. As for the process, it can be created. We don't need to know the whole process. What we need to discuss is what kind of entry point we need to create in this process. What she could create was naturally the most certain. Qin Weibai was silent for a long time. Saint and military counselor stopped talking. After a long time, Qin Weibai sighed tiredly and said softly, Tianlan is coming back. We'll discuss this when he comes back. Military counselor frowned and was about to speak. Qin Weibai's cell phone rang. She took out her cell phone and answered it. After listening for a while, she put down the phone with a strange look. What's wrong? Saint asked aloud. There's news from the hospital. Qin Weibai frowned slightly. Li Guangtu woke up. Chapter 673. When he struggled to sit up from the hospital bed, Li Guangtu's consciousness was in a blank state for a long time. The hospital at night was quiet. His bed was near the window. In the sky by the window, the silver moon hung high, and the cold and bright light enveloped him. Everything in his sight seemed to be in a trance. He opened his eyes and stared blankly out of the window, not moving for a long time. It seemed that a nurse who was making ward rounds late at night came in, and then rushed out in surprise. Li Guangtu had been sitting there, not speaking, not moving, and even without any thoughts. His figure gradually merged with the moonlight, and became extremely indifferent. The doctor rushed to the ward at the first time, and carefully seemed to want to check his physical condition. A hazy and almost weak sword light appeared around the figure shrouded in moonlight. The sword light, which had no lethality at all, seriously injured two doctors on the spot. The ward was completely quiet. Under the moonlight, blood flowed down Li Guangtu's body. The sword intent that had just been forcibly released directly affected the injury in his body. The severe pain and tearing feeling spread from every part of his body. Li Guangtu, who was a little sluggish, finally frowned and looked down at his bleeding body. Thinking and consciousness began to return with the pain. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and turned his eyes. The sound of the instruments in the ward was still ringing. The ward he was in was not a single room. Less than 5 meters away from him, there was an extremely delicate and beautiful figure lying on the ground, unconscious. Her long black hair was scattered on the white bedsheets. She lay there motionlessly, so quiet that she was like a phantom. The instrument beside her showed her heart rate and blood pressure. Li Guangtu glanced at it and laughed at himself. His smile seemed to be distorted because of the pain, and he looked a little crazy. Li Shi. This was the woman he had once loved deeply, but she had ruined everything for him. Li Guangtu never dreamed that the first person he saw after he woke up from serious injuries would be Li Shi. Li Guangtu's eyes gradually became indifferent. He stared at Li Shi indifferently, and his eyes were full of disgust. Even if she stood by his side in Eastern Europe, even if she resisted the pressure of Kunlun City in Eastern Europe to draw a sword for him. But she betrayed him. The wife of the governor of Kunlun City. Li Guangtu smiled again. How beautiful a woman was. However, the disgust in his eyes became clearer and clearer. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. He felt a little sick. There was the sound of the door being pushed open. With light footsteps, Qin Weibai walked into the ward with Saint. Li Guangtu shifted his gaze. The disgust in his eyes quickly faded, but Qin Weibai was still keenly aware of his emotions. The smile on her face instantly froze, and her heart sank at the same time. She stood there looking extremely awkward. Where am I? Li Guangtu asked directly, because fresh blood flowed down his body. At this moment, he was completely awake. Even though he was extremely weak, His every move still carried an extremely obvious offensive nature. Yuzhou. Qin Weibai said nothing. It was the saint who answered him. Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows for a moment and sneered. The capital of Zhongzhou State. Why? I'm a traitor now in Yuzhou. Why didn't anyone catch me and bring me back for trial? I'm awake now. Why are you here instead of the elites of Kunlun City? Saint was silent. Qin Weibai was silent. Li Guangtu's smile became more and more obvious and mocking. Oh, I forgot that the hostess of Kunlun City is here now. Why? Is Zhongzhou State going to let her take me back? Now I wake up earlier than her. Is Zhongzhou State very disappointed? Do you hate her? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Now Li Guangtu was obviously a little emotional, but everything he showed in an emotional state was closer to his true mind. Li Guangtu froze for a moment. He looked at Qin Weibai in surprise. He didn't know what his awakening meant for the time being. But in the situation in Eastern Europe he could still live, which was enough to show that there was a problem in the Wang family of Beihai, even a big problem. What problem was more important than Wang Tianzong's own state? After a little speculation, Li Guangtu could roughly know Wang Tianzong's current state. The Wang family of Beihai was unstable internally. It was not difficult to guess what attitude Zhongzhou State would have. There were more and more rumors in Zhongzhou State now. But really, how could it be a rumor? Beihai was too strong. Zhongzhou State would definitely take action when it found the right time. It was impossible for Li Guangtu not to think of this. He woke up at this time, and there were too many things to say to Qin Weibai. If he was willing to cooperate, the purgatory of Heaven capital could play an unexpected role. But now, standing in front of him, Qin Weibai's first sentence was to ask him if he hated Li Shi. Was this an important question? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Guangtu was at a loss for a moment, and then shook his head. I hated her, but I don't hate her now. He was telling the truth. He had loved and hated this woman. But now this kind of extreme emotion would no longer exist. He just felt that Li Shi was disgusting, really disgusting. Is it because of that sword stroke? Qin Weibai asked seriously. But if you want to hate her, it shouldn't have started at that time, right? Li Guangtu was inexplicable. He couldn't figure out why Qin Weibai was entangled in this topic. But he had just woken up and had not recovered from his serious injury, so he was a little relaxed. Why do you say that? I know the battle that year, Qin Weibai said. I even know the list of masters who participated in the battle that year. In the face of that kind of siege, no matter how you look at it, you will lose without a doubt. In the end, you will not have the possibility of winning. But if you are in a stalemate in the end, you may not die, but Li Shi's sword ended everything for you. Qin Weibai looked into his eyes. She was very serious, but with a trace of tension. I have simulated that battle many times. Different environments, different moves, and different situations tell me that at the moment when Li Shi pierced your heart with the long sword, if you wanted to take action, it was absolutely possible to kill Li Shi at that moment. But you didn't do that. Why? Li Guangtu's brows furrowed more tightly. I can't do it. He was expressionless and said in a cold voice. It's impossible that you can't do it. Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu very seriously. You can't bear to, right? Even at that time you can't bear to kill her. Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai coldly and did not speak. Do you regret it? Qin Weibai continued to ask. Or have you ever regretted it? In the almost suffocating silence, Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. What do you think? Saint took a step forward, and seemed to want to pull Qin Weibai away. Qin Weibai suddenly waved her hand to let Saint step back. She looked at Li Guangtu closely and said word by word, I don't know. She really didn't know. But this was her obsession. I don't regret it. Li Guangtu said faintly. This is the thing I regret the most in my life. He looked at Li Shi. Such a disgusting woman. I couldn't bear to kill her at that time. Oh, I should have smashed her into pieces at that time. He looked at the unconscious Li Shi, and his eyes became colder. Qin Weibai seemed to have lost all her strength in an instant, and her face suddenly became as pale as paper. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 674. Disgust was a very common emotion. But when a person hated something he had liked or even loved deeply, to some extent, it was equivalent to denying everything he had liked before. Those pursuits, those passions, those affections, everything was completely denied, and it was cold and cruel. This was different from hatred. Qin Weibai actually hoped that Li Guangtu had some hatred for Li Shi, because it meant that he still hadn't let go of the past that he had protected and devoted himself to. The so-called hatred was nothing more than being unable to accept it. But in Li Guangtu's eyes and tone, she really didn't see any hatred. There was only indifference and disgust. Have you ever thought that maybe she had no choice but to do what she did back then? Maybe she was coerced by someone? Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and was silent for a long time before she asked tentatively. At this moment, she was really not strong at all. She even looked a little delicate and pitiful. For example, her father at that time. Qin Weibai said softly, and her and your child. Li Guangtu looked at her silently. There was no emotion in his eyes. In the extremely perturbed waiting, he felt the blood flowing through his body and finally gave his answer. Do I need to know? The simplest rhetorical question. But Qin Weibai froze there for a long time. At that time, I was already dead. Li Guangtu smiled and talked about the sword in that year, and his tone didn't even have the disgust he had just shown. She may have been involuntarily, but at that time, her sword pierced my chest. I was already dead. Does a dead person need to know these things? Even if she has many explanations, which are inspiring and sad, what's the use? I'm already dead. After she killed me, would she say to my corpse that she was involuntarily, and then hope that the dead person would forgive her? Some things couldn't be explained. Qin Weibai finally understood why Li Shi was always silent when Li Shi and Li Guangtu met more than once many years later. Even in Eastern Europe, when she stood beside Li Guangtu and faced Wang Tianzong, she had no choice. She was coerced. She couldn't help it. But everything was her own position. In fact, she killed Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu could come back to life. This was his ability, and it had nothing to do with Li Shi. No one understood what she had endured in her heart. No one could understand what was going through Li Guangtu's mind when her sword pierced through his heart. So many years. So many grievances. Qin Weibai muttered to herself. I didn't give it to you. Li Guangtu said indifferently. I don't owe her anything. Even if I did, I've paid it off back then. You're right, I could have killed her back then. But I can't bear to. Regret is a matter for the future. She betrayed me back then, but I spared her life. Haven't I paid her back? It's her own choice to suffer all these years of grievance. If she really doesn't want to suffer. Li Guangtu smiled and glanced at Li Shi, who was still unconscious. Why doesn't she die? But she helped you in Eastern Europe. Qin Weibai said. The moonlight shone on her face. Her face was so pale that it was almost transparent. I am very grateful to myself. Li Guangtu nodded. She can help me because I didn't kill her back then. She owes me the life I gave her. Do you expect me to forgive her just because of that? Qin Weibai's body shook slightly. Her brain was in a mess, and everything was blank. Her hands were clenched into fists, and her nails had pierced into her palms. Blood dripped down her palms and dripped on the floor. Li Guangtu suddenly raised his eyebrows. Saint, who was standing closely behind Qin Weibai, suddenly raised his head. The majestic sword intent instantly filled every corner of the ward. The ward was quiet, not a sound could be heard. Saint was silent for a long time before he calmly said, Boss, this question is meaningless. You seem to care about this question? Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai with some playfulness and said thoughtfully, Why? Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and did not speak. What do you want from me? Li Guangtu did not seem to be obsessed with the answer. His voice returned to indifference, and there was even a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Have you ever thought? Qin Weibai's voice trembled a little, but she still continued the original topic. She actually had a lot of things to say here. The identity of Li Guangtu meant too many things. In the next general trend, if used well, he was definitely the most important figure. The cooperation between the Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, the Li family and the Samsara Palace, the Emperor East Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, Tiannan, and even the Wang family of Beihai. As long as the two sides could cooperate, there were too many things that could be done. However, the question about Li Shi obviously interfered with Qin Weibai's thinking. Her heart was in a mess. In such a state, it was obviously not suitable to talk about any cooperation with Li Guangtu. She pointed at Li Shi with her blood-stained fingers. She has had a bad life these years. Who will understand her situation and everything she has endured? The blood dripped on the ground. Li Guangtu was silent for a moment and said faintly, "No one understands." "Are you saying that she deserves all of this?" Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and asked. Li Guangtu was expressionless and did not speak for a long time. Qin Weibai stood up and looked at Li Shi. Her eyes flashed with countless complex emotions. Li Shi lay quietly. For so many years, it seemed that it was the first time that she had slept so peacefully. "I can understand her." Qin Weibai was silent for a long time before she said softly, "Li Guangtu was not wrong. Li Shi was also not wrong." In the most unfeeling world, there were always some people who lived the most affectionate. She could understand everything about her. "If you want, I can change a ward for her." Qin Weibai turned around and looked at Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu nodded expressionlessly without any hesitation. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Shi for a long time before she turned and left. Saint looked back at Li Guangtu, did not speak, and closed the door of the ward. The moonlight shone down softly. The whole room was cold. Li Guangtu was silent for a long time alone, and suddenly said, "When do you want to see it?" "Why, when your woman and your subordinates are here. Do you have any concerns that you can't say?" Li Shi was still asleep. The moonlight gently fluctuated in the dark corner that could not be found. A figure came out of the darkness and became clearer and clearer. "I just don't think our next negotiation should be heard by anyone." Li Tianlan stood in front of Li Guangtu and said calmly. Chapter 675. Li Tianlan. Li Guangtu. No matter what kind of relationship they had, because of the Li family, the two of them were destined to have countless entanglements in their lives. They really should have a good talk. But Li Tianlan paid attention to his wording. Li Guangtu also paid attention to Li Tianlan's wording. He meant negotiation. No matter what the two talked about next, this word was rational and a little cold. Blood stained Li Guangtu's hospital gown. His body did not move, and the slowly oozing blood had stopped. He sat on the bed, covered with moonlight, looking at Li Tianlan standing in the dark, and thought a lot in an instant. The purgatory of heaven capital that belonged to him. The Emperor Dong's palace that belonged to Li Tianlan. The Li family was in the middle. A lot of things were pushed forward by an invisible force the moment his identity was exposed, constantly moving forward. Whether it was a collision or fusion, it was something that had to happen. Such a negotiation would come sooner or later. But for Li Guangtu now, the timing of this negotiation was too outrageous. Under the moonlight, Li Guangtu looked up at Li Tianlan and said expressionlessly, "What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me?" "You're still alive," Li Tianlan said calmly. "Then I'm qualified." Li Guangtu was alive because Wang Tianzong did not kill him, and also because Li Tianlan saved him. The faint darkness in the ward surrounded Li Tianlan. His outline was a little blurred, but his voice was extremely clear. "I don't owe you anything." "Indeed." Li Guangtu was silent for a long time before he nodded. He saved Li Tianlan once in Eastern Europe. Li Tianlan also saved him once in Eastern Europe. They owed each other nothing. The silent ward was filled with indifference. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu quietly. From Beihai to Sai City, from Sai City to Yuzhou, and then to this ward. His body was extremely tired, but his mind was clearer and calmer. Facing Li Guangtu, there was only calmness in his heart. Were they father and son? Li Tianlan didn't know, but now he didn't want to avoid anything anymore. He didn't know, so he asked directly, "Are you my father?" Li Guangtu gave him a cold look. "If that's the case." Li Tianlan smiled and pointed at Li Shi. "You, me, her, and we are a family of three?" He found it hard to believe that he could calmly discuss his background in front of the people who were most likely to be his parents. "Regardless, I need an answer." Li Guangtu did not hesitate this time. You didn't hide it. He gave Li Tianlan the truest answer. No. Li Tianlan fell silent. After a long while he smiled and said, I see. Li Guangtu's answer seemed to have cleared up some of the confusion he had for a long time. Why couldn't he get Li Guangtu's approval? Why was it not recognized by the purgatory of heaven capital? Why did some people in the Li family think he didn't deserve to own the Li family? The reason was simple, because he and Li Guangtu weren't father and son. In that case, our negotiation is even more necessary. He said calmly, What do you want to talk about? Li Guangtu's voice became more and more indifferent. Let's talk about the Li family. Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward. At the place where moonlight and darkness met, his figure suddenly became extremely real. It doesn't matter whether we are father and son or not. It doesn't matter whether my surname is Li or not. I don't care about these questions. But there is one thing I care about. He looked into Li Guangtu's eyes. No matter who I am, the Li family must be mine. Oh. Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. I want the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Tianlan's voice was extremely calm. In your dreams. Without any hesitation, Li Guangtu gave his attitude. His smile was a little weak, but his voice was very firm. If your surname is not Li, why do you want the Li family that belongs to me? Because my name is Li Tianlan all these years. Li Tianlan looked at him and said, This will not change in the future. You ask me why? Huh? Why? If my surname is not Li, why have I borne everything for the Li family for so many years? Li Guangtu turned his head and said lightly, You shouldn't ask me this question. Indeed, he shouldn't ask him. If he wanted to ask, maybe he should ask Li Honghe, his biological parents, and all the people who made that decision at that time. I will ask them. Li Tianlan said lightly, but the answer is not important. What matters is that I must get the Li family, the complete Li family. Again, you don't deserve it. Li Guangtu said coldly. You have your grievances, but the Li family doesn't owe you anything. You may have suffered a lot, but when has the Li family ever treated you badly? The 24 moves of sword, the map of God of War, and your current martial arts are closely related to the Li family. You are now the chosen one in the dark world. If there is no Li family, if you are not Li Tianlan, you will get nothing. Li Tianlan's life should not be like this. Li Guangtu knew this. Now Li Tianlan also knew this. Perhaps as Li Guangtu said, if it were not for the Li family, he could not learn the 24 moves of sword. There would be the title of the chosen one in him. But without these, his life would also be wonderful. He would be the top young master in the whole Zhongzhou state, living in luxury and wealth. His life would be extremely stable to a position that was enough to make people tremble. He would not have to wander on the edge of life and death, nor would he have to struggle with the so-called general trend. His road was extremely smooth, and he could also shine. What was wrong with that kind of life? He exchanged that kind of life for everything he had today, which was not a gain at all. It really didn't matter whether his surname was Li or not. What mattered was that in the past 20 years, under countless pressures and expectations, he was Li Tianlan, and he had always been Li Tianlan. If he couldn't get the Li family, then what was his past 20 years worth of time? I am the chosen one. Li Tianlan said calmly. In this case, you should be more relieved to hand over the purgatory of heaven capital to me. After all, no matter who I am, my surname is Li now. Will you kill me? Li Guangtu was silent for a while, and suddenly asked. Now he was seriously injured and had no combat power at all. If Li Tianlan wanted to kill him, it could be said to be effortless. If I insist on not handing over the purgatory of heaven capital to you, will you kill me? He asked again. No. Li Tianlan said lightly. I'm not surprised by such an answer. Li Guangtu nodded. So you shouldn't be surprised by my answer. I can't hand over the purgatory of heaven capital to you. You are the future chosen one, but now, in my eyes, you are nothing. When my injury heals, no, as long as I recover half of my combat power. It doesn't make sense. Li Tianlan said calmly. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, you should realize this. You Wang Tianzong, you are both outdated. When everyone was guessing how powerful Li Tianlan was today, Li Tianlan finally revealed his trump card in front of Li Guangtu. Not to mention half of your combat power. Even if you recover to your peak state, you may not be able to do anything to me. He did not enter the invincible realm, but he had a sword in his hand. In the darkness, he raised his hand. The exquisite Xianyuan sword appeared in his palm, trembling meekly. I may not be your opponent, but with it, what can you do? Li Guangtu looked up at Li Tianlan's palm. The Xianyuan sword was slowly rotating. Extremely elegant, but extremely sharp. A very obvious astonishment appeared on Li Guangtu's face. His expression was as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. This thing, his pupils contracted for a moment, and he said incredulously, how could this thing be in your hands? Divine Emperor of 9 heavens. Chapter 676. Every emotion had a priority. The moment he saw the Xianyuan sword, Li Guangtu's eyes were filled with undisguised fear, but the most obvious emotion was astonishment. It was a kind of absurdity that he had never thought of. In the face of the Xianyuan sword, he blinked hard and even shook his head. In the state of the sword formation, the finger-sized Xianyuan sword rose and fell slightly in Li Tianlan's hand. The dark sword formation slowly rotated, with a kind of profound and extremely profound sword intent. Sharp, and awe-inspiring, it contained all the sword intent, but it seemed to repel everything. It was a pure sword, irresistible. Now it's my sword, not in my hand. Where is it? Li Tianlan asked. Li Guangtu was obviously stunned, and his tone was a little sarcastic. You call it a sword? Well, even if it's a sword, what you snatched is also yours, right? Li Tianlan looked inexplicable. The Xianyuan sword and the 13-story building recognized each other, as its master was a little strange, but he didn't snatch anything at all. Snatch? From whom? Do you know it? Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu, and his tone was a little nervous. The 13-story building and the Xianyuan sword belonged to Dongqing Huangtu's sword formation. Li Guangtu knew the Xianyuan sword and its origin. Did it mean that Li Guangtu knew Dongqing Huangtu? Everything seemed to be connected in an instant. He was not Li Guangtu's son. The master of Samsara Palace's support for him came from Dongqing Huangtu. He thought of the Dongqing clan's almost unrequited kindness to him. Who was Dongqing Huangtu to him? Do you know this sword? Li Tianlan raised his palm slightly, and the Xianyuan sword floated closer to Li Guangtu. At that moment, Li Guangtu's body suddenly became completely tense. He stared at the Xianyuan sword in front of him. After a long silence, he smiled mockingly. What's so strange about it? This sword? Who doesn't know it? You know this sword, Li Tianlan said slowly. Then do you know the previous owner of this sword? Li Guangtu frowned. For so many years, the owner of this sword had been standing at the highest place in the dark world. Everyone could see and hear him. What kind of idiotic question was that? Tell me the origin of this sword, Li Tianlan said slowly. Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. You want to talk about your background? The look in his eyes was very strange. You've been with that old guy since you were a child. Didn't he tell you the history of Zhongzhou State? I don't know what you mean. Li Tianlan was a little surprised. I think you are. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. It's boring. Li Guangtu shook his head impatiently and looked at the Xianyuan sword floating in front of him. His eyes flashed and he didn't speak for a long time. The moment he saw the Xianyuan sword, he really realized that the era that belonged to him and Wang Tianzong had finally passed. A new era had arrived. His injury was extremely serious. The appearance of this sword in Li Tianlan's hand showed that Wang Tianzong's injury could only be more serious than his. Li Guangtu believed that he was at least 80% sure that he could recover to his peak state, but it would take time. A very, very long time passed. Even if Li Tianlan would not kill him, even if there were no accidents during the process, what could he do after he recovered to his peak? If he were in his peak state now, such a Li Tianlan, such a sword would still not pose a threat to him. But during the period of his slow recovery, Li Tianlan would grow, and so would the sword. As Li Tianlan said, Even if he recovered from his injury, what could he do to Li Tianlan? Li Tianlan waved his hand. The Xianyuan sword floating in front of Li Guangtu fell into Li Tianlan's hand, docile and cheerful. Li Guangtu watched the scene quietly. He really couldn't figure out why this sword was so docile in Li Tianlan's hand. How long had it been since the war in Eastern Europe? If this sword was really a life, it was really enough to change one's mind. How is Wang Tianzong's injury? Li Guangtu suddenly asked. The Xianyuan sword appeared in Li Tianlan's hand, which meant that Wang Tianzong might have suffered unimaginable injuries. But Li Guangtu did not believe that he would die. With the absolute dominance he showed in Eastern Europe, Li Guangtu also did not believe that there was any power that could kill him. I don't know. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said lightly, but it should be more serious than yours. I don't think the dark world will see him again for a long time. So is this the reason why you are arrogant and supercilious now? Li Guangtu asked. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and did not speak. Arrogant and domineering? Supercilious? He didn't know what Li Guangtu was referring to. What did you do in Beihai province? Li Guangtu looked at the Xianyuan sword in Li Tianlan's hand, and his voice was a little erratic. Li Tianlan's eyes became extremely cold in an instant. If what he did in Beihai was arrogant and supercilious in Li Guangtu's eyes, then what was Li Guangtu's position now? I just went there to ask for an explanation, Li Tianlan said lightly. By the way, I went to their so-called 7 sword-holding families. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. I went around in the clan. By the way, even though he was mentally prepared, Li Guangtu still showed a surprised expression. Of course he knew what it meant. It meant that after Eastern Europe, Li Tianlan fought through the entire Beihai. Have you seen the old bastard of the Jiang family? DK. Li Tianlan said, he died. The almost dead silence lasted for a long time. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and said calmly, so, you don't leave any room for negotiation? I didn't go to the stage of formidable person, Li Tianlan said. Li Guangtu smiled sarcastically. His eyes flickered, and he said thoughtfully, in that case, there has been a change in the Wang family of Beihai. You can come back, which means that summer solstice didn't take action, and the hidden danger in the Wang family of Beihai broke out with Wang Tianzong's serious injury? Li Tianlan did not speak. These were things he had known for a long time. But Li Tianlan suddenly raised his eyebrows. The problems of the Wang family of Beihai, the problems of Zhongzhou state and Beihai were indeed becoming more and more obvious. But Li Guangtu had just woken up. His memory still stayed in the period that ended in Eastern Europe. Then how did he know that he had been to Beihai province? Do you know that I have been to Beihai province? Li Tianlan asked. Li Guangtu looked at Li Tianlan mockingly, and his eyes finally fell on the Xianyuan sword that was rotating around him. If you haven't been to the Wang family of Beihai, how did you get this thing? Li Tianlan felt a little incredible. You mean this sword belongs to the Wang family of Beihai? Do you still think this is a sword? Li Guangtu sneered and said, you snatched it and turned it into a sword, and then you can really deceive yourself into thinking that this is your sword. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu was also looking at Li Tianlan. At this moment, Li Tianlan finally confirmed that although both of them were talking about this sword, they seemed to be talking to themselves. Li Guangtu didn't understand what Li Tianlan said. Li Tianlan didn't understand what Li Guangtu said either. The Xianyuan sword once again floated between them. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu and asked seriously, if this is not a sword, then what is it? Li Guangtu glanced at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at an idiot. But this time he did not avoid Li Tianlan's question, nor did he ask Li Tianlan to turn over the history of Zhongzhou state. His answer was extremely clear and certain. What kind of sword is this? Li Guangtu said coldly. This is the human emperor. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 677. Human Emperor. The first of the 12 murderous weapons in the Dark World. It was a murderous weapon that had belonged exclusively to the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years. Facing the Xianyuan sword, Li Guangtu told Li Tianlan in a very certain tone that the Xianyuan sword was the human emperor. How was this possible? A huge surprise hit Li Tianlan's mind. This was something that he had never expected. Perhaps it was because he was too surprised that he looked extremely calm. Which Ren Huang? Looking at Li Guangtu, he asked seriously. Of course it's the human emperor of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Guangtu said coldly. You killed DK in the North Sea province and stole the human emperor. Have you not considered the situation in the future? Li Tianlan remained silent. Was the Xianyuan sword the human emperor? Li Tianlan didn't know. He had never seen the scene when the murderous weapon from the Wang family of Beihai fired. He hadn't even seen the real body of the human emperor. However, Li Guangtu had seen it before. Before him, the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai had been close for hundreds of years. The Li family was no stranger to the human emperor. In recent decades, the human emperor had opened fire 3 times, and one of them was even shot by his grandfather, Li Honghe, with the human emperor in his hand. Therefore, Li Guangtu's tone was extremely certain that he would not be mistaken. The Xianyuan sword was the human emperor. Moreover, after devouring the devil army, it was now a human emperor that could barely fire again. The most unreplicable aspect of the evil demon army was to implant the remaining materials of the murderous weapons into the human body. After a long period of freezing, the metabolism of those experts who were infinitely close to death would be reduced to the lowest. The remaining trace of vitality would fuse with the spirituality of the materials of the murderous weapons, and in a short period of time, they could erupt with absolute combat power. The Devil Legion's strongest ability was self-destruction. The long period of freezing was enough for the materials of the murderous weapons in their bodies to gather enough energy, and they would explode instantly. Although it could not be compared to a complete murderous weapon, it could be regarded as an attack from a murderous weapon that was not in its peak state. The suppression of the 13 floors on the Devil Army lay in the fact that each sword could absorb the power unleashed by the murderous weapons. In fact, it could no longer be considered as absorption. It could even be said to be engulfing. The Xianyuan sword, which had devoured the Devil Army, had regained its spirituality once again. It had reached the point where it could barely be used again. Devour. Devour? A light suddenly flashed in Li Tianlan's mind. The human emperor had been made into the coldness of 9 states by the Wang family of Beihai in the chaos of Eastern Europe. But whether it was the coldness of the 9 states or the human emperor, the most important material was the same. In the hands of the master of Samsara Palace, the 13-story pagoda became an eternal sword that cut through the sky. The 13th pagoda could devour the energy of the Devil Army. Why couldn't he devour the human emperor? If that was the case, Li Tianlan looked at the Xianyuan sword. The black blade was still spinning slightly, expressing its docility to Li Tianlan all the time. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little ridiculous. If Li Guangtu did feel the aura of the human emperor on the Xianyuan sword, that was to say, in the last sword strike in Eastern Europe, the 13 floors pagoda really swallowed up the human emperor? The leader of the 12 malefic weapons was swallowed? It seemed that this was the only way to explain why the Xianyuan sword was so docile towards him. Because the Xianyuan sword was not the human emperor, but a sword that had devoured the human emperor? Li Tianlan suddenly found himself unable to explain these problems. However, he did not intend to explain anything to Li Guangtu. He took a step forward. The Xianyuan sword flew back and merged into nothingness. Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and handed it to Li Guangtu. Do you want one? Li Guangtu reached out and took it. Li Tianlan lit it for him. I'm not the one who should think about the situation. Li Tianlan temporarily put aside his doubts about the Xianyuan sword. After all, this was not his main purpose today. It should be you. Have you thought about the situation in the future? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. My situation? Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows slightly. You are Li Guangtu, Li Tianlan said calmly. The whole dark world knows about it, but the purgatory of heaven capital is still in East Island. The pale white smoke lingered in the bright moonlight. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu. If you go back to East Island and heaven capital, what kind of stance will you take? What kind of attitude will East Island have towards Li Guangtu? Li Guangtu was silent. He just woke up and couldn't judge the situation outside, but it didn't mean that he didn't realize the seriousness of this problem. Li Guangtu and deity. One person, two identities, but they were two completely different things. Since his identity was exposed, both Zhongzhou State and East Island had been silent about it. Now that Li Guangtu woke up, he naturally knew what it meant. Both Zhongzhou State and East Island were waiting for his choice. Li Guangtu was deity, and deity was Li Guangtu. But after all, these were two identities. If he chose to stay in Zhongzhou State, he would be Li Guangtu. Then everything he had in East Island, the whole heaven capital, would be mercilessly suppressed by East Island. Now it was not the final battle of heaven capital more than 3 years ago. After the end of the chaos in Eastern Europe, all the superpowers suffered heavy losses. But Wuji Palace and Jifeng Sword Reigning School in East Island still maintained their strength. The most important thing was that Luxing Songquan and Tianhai Wuji, two grandmasters of the invincible realm, still had enough combat power. When they joined forces and Li Guangtu was seriously injured, the situation of the purgatory of heaven capital would undoubtedly be extremely difficult. If he chose to return to heaven capital, he would be deity and the guardian of East Island. But once he made such a choice, his identity would no longer be in doubt for Zhongzhou State. He would become a real traitor. He had the right to choose, but it was still uncertain whether he could leave Zhongzhou State. And even if he stayed in Zhongzhou State, he still had to face Kunlun City, which was unusually silent at this time. Chaos. When the old era passed and the new era began, Zhongzhou State was completely a huge whirlpool. Li Guangtu was in it, and he had never been in a dilemma. What do you suggest? He glanced at Li Tianlan and suddenly asked. I can shelter the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Tianlan's voice was calm as he said a fact that sounded like a joke. Shelter the purgatory of heaven capital. How funny did it sound? But now Li Tianlan already had such strength. The general trend in Eastern Europe was mighty. Under the general trend, the experts of the invincible realm were really like grass. Now that the general trend had passed, the divine and holy lists in the dark world were almost useless, and most of the experts of the invincible realm had died. Under such circumstances, including Zhongzhou State, the high-end combat power of the dark world suddenly became scarce. And East Island jumped up. Tianhai Wuji, Luxing Songquan. Today's East Island could even be said to be the only country with two experts of the invincible realm, who were still at the peak. East Island already had the strength that everyone was afraid of. But Li Tianlan was not afraid of anything. Now he was not afraid of Luxing Songquan or Tianhai Wuji. Standing in the sky without shadows in the new era, he was fearless. He could shelter the purgatory of heaven capital, and even anyone. What are the conditions? Li Guangtu also knew this, but his tone was still mocking. Give you the purgatory of heaven capital? No need. Li Tianlan said blandly. As long as you withdraw from East Island. Withdraw from East Island? Li Guangtu was a little surprised. I can't eat it. Li Tianlan opened his mouth seriously. Li Tianlan sheltered the purgatory of heaven capital. No matter what happened between him and Li Guangtu, at least in the eyes of outsiders, the purgatory of heaven capital could be regarded as Li Tianlan's force. In this way, Li Tianlan really got too much. The 5 countries in Eastern Europe belonged to Li Tianlan. Next, Li Tianlan would try his best to develop Tiannan. After all, that was his real foundation. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Tianlan also had to prepare for the game between Zhongzhou State and the Wang family of Beihai, and what would happen to the nearly 800,000 square kilometers of land in the northeast. Bai Qingqian suddenly transferred from Qingzhou to Liaodong more than 3 years ago, which was obviously a precaution of the giant group. To some extent, once the game between the Wang family of Beihai and Zhongzhou State began, the giant group could even be said to be the main force in Zhongzhou State. This was not only the position of the giant group, but also Dongqing Wudi's current position in Zhongzhou State could only continue to be tough. His toughness represented Zhongzhou State and the giant group. It was impossible for Li Tianlan to ignore the giant group. So once the game began, the northeast would also involve a lot of Li Tianlan's energy. In this way, the the 5 Eastern European countries and the Wang family of Beihai, which had already occupied Snow Country, would have constant friction. Now there was East Island. Li Tianlan really couldn't eat it. Even if such a big benefit was placed in front of him, he could only temporarily put it down. Now Emperor Dong's palace had just been established, but its expansion had reached the real limit. The next step was to stabilize it. If the Purgatory of Heaven capital was still in East Island, he really couldn't take care of them. So what do you want to do? Li Guangtu was silent for a while and said slowly, "Come to Tiannan." Li Tianlan said calmly, "I'll arrange it." Tiannan currently didn't belong to Zhongzhou state. It could be regarded as a good move for the Purgatory of Heaven capital to enter Tiannan, which meant that Li Guangtu didn't completely choose Zhongzhou state. In this way, he could also leave a part of his foundation in East Island. When Emperor Dong's palace was completely powerful, he could also get in touch with this part of the foundation and annex East Island. Calm, rational, and ambitious. This was the current Li Tianlan. He was becoming more and more mature and more indifferent. At the right time, I will open the gate of the Purgatory of Heaven capital to enter Zhongzhou state. You can rest assured about this. Li Tianlan said. Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. Your so-called right time is after you take control of the Purgatory of Heaven capital, right? Li Tianlan didn't speak. In order to let the Purgatory of Heaven capital enter Zhongzhou state, the first thing to deal with was Kunlun city, and then Li Guangtu. This was a very cruel answer, but it was also the only answer. The Li family is mine, but it also belongs to everyone in the Li family. It doesn't make sense for you and me to argue about this here. Li Tianlan said slowly. What's wrong with taking them all to Tiannan and giving everyone a chance to choose? Are you so confident? Li Guangtu smiled faintly. I will take everything of the Li family back to the peak, even beyond the peak, beyond the Wang family of Beihai. Such a Li family is the best. Don't you like it? Li Tianlan didn't answer the question. Li Guangtu was silent for a long time before he whispered, "That's really good." But his tone was a little complicated. It's not mine. What's the use of being good? Li Tianlan looked at him and didn't speak for a long time, until a cell phone ring suddenly sounded. The sharp ringing of the bell cut through the night, making people panic. Li Tianlan took out his cell phone and looked at the number. It was the phone number of Zhou Yuanshan, the current governor of Jiangxia. In the deep and silent night, the moment he saw the number, Li Tianlan's heart sank for no reason. He couldn't describe this feeling, but the inexplicable premonition made him extremely cold. He took a deep breath and answered the phone. Brother-in-law. Tianlan. Zhou Yuanshan's voice was still steady, but with a slight tremble. Are you back to Yuzhou? Li Tianlan said yes. When he came to Yuzhou, he first went to see Dongqing Rushi, and then came to Li Guangtu. Bai Qingqian, who had been staying in the ward, was the first to know the news of his return. Zhou Yuanshan was silent for a moment, and then he said hoarsely, "Come to Linen." He paused, and then his hoarse voice rang in Li Tianlan's ear like a bolt from the blue. The old master is dying. Anyway, you have to see him for the last time. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 678. Clap. In the silent ward, with a crisp sound, the cell phone with the screen on slipped from Li Tianlan's hand and fell to the ground. Li Tianlan's mind went blank. He had fought through Beihai, killed DK, and defeated Dijiang. At this moment, he who was getting stronger and stronger, seemed to suddenly lose all his strength. His body shook and he took 2 steps back. With a dull sound, his back hit the wall. No one knew what Li Honghe meant to Li Tianlan. He was an indestructible mountain, a giant pillar that held up the sky, a blazing sun, and a light in the dark. Childhood and adolescence. During the most bitter and tiring, but also the most reassuring period of his life, Li Honghe had been by his side. They were in the military camp, which meant the lowest point of the Li family, in the primeval forest where there was only heat and not much sunshine all year round, and in front of the cemetery where countless victims of the Li family were buried. Li Honghe showed him a way. It was steep, dangerous, and full of thorns, but it was the only way. At that time, Li Tianlan could not see the end of the road. Now Li Tianlan could not see the end of the road either. But Li Tianlan did not even think about it, and kept rushing down the road. Blood and death, crisis and temptation, conspiracy and trap, life and death and separation. In the face of all these, Li Tianlan never flinched, because he knew very well that Li Honghe was watching him behind him no matter what. Now he was still sprinting on this road. When all the thorns and mud were left behind by him, the figure who was also watching him behind him finally fell down. The person he cared about the most, respected the most, and worshipped the most. For many years, even if his figure was no longer tall, even if his spirit was gradually declining, even if his eyes became old, Li Tianlan never thought that he would fall down. But now, when the road ahead of him became flat, wide and full of sunshine and light, he was about to sprint, but Zhou Yuanshan's call told him that Grandpa could not make it. What did he mean? How could he not make it? Li Tianlan's mind was in a mess. He shook his head hard and tried to stand firm to pick up the phone. But as soon as he took a step, he fell down again. There was no light in the ward, and the phone screen was still on, shining faintly. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth moved. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood. He struggled to grab the phone and put it back to his ear. Tianlan? Tianlan? On the phone, Zhou Yuanshan's voice was still ringing. Li Tianlan said. His voice was extremely steady, but the hand holding the phone kept shaking, and his eyes were full of confusion. Come back first. Zhou Yuanshan said in a low voice. The old man has been in a coma for several days. His condition is very bad. I want to ask for your opinion. If you have no other requirements, I have already planned to inform the Parliament of Zhongzhou State. Parliament? Li Tianlan murmured and repeated the words. This isn't just about your family. Zhou Yuanshan smiled bitterly and said with mixed feelings. Old Li's life and death is a national affair. This was indeed a national affair. After all, Li Honghe was once the patron saint of Zhongzhou State. Even if he had been standing in the darkness that most people could not see, no one dared to deny his achievements. His death might not be on the news broadcast of Zhongzhou State like other giants, and everyone knew about it. But in fact, he would receive no less treatment than anyone else. The news about Li Honghe had been tightly blocked. But seeing that everything had come to the end, it was meaningless to block it. Among the 9 directors of Zhongzhou State Parliament, one was currently visiting Europe, and the other was going to visit Africa in a few days. These things had to stop, and the directors abroad had to return in advance. This was the end of an era. Combined with Li Tianlan's current momentum, the 9 directors of Zhongzhou State had their reasons to be present. Li Tianlan was silent for a long time. He supported Li Guangtu's bed to stand up and said hoarsely, I'm going. Zhou Yuanshan said, I've arranged a special plane at number 6 Air Force Base. Li Tianlan said yes and hung up the phone. The blankness and emptiness of suddenly hearing the bad news gradually became clear and faint. Li Tianlan's expression was stiff, but his eyes involuntarily turned red. Li Guangtu had been looking at him for a long time. Grandpa is leaving. He glanced at Li Guangtu and forced himself to speak calmly. In the hazy moonlight, Li Guangtu's expression seemed to freeze all of a sudden. Everything in the room became frozen. After a long time, Li Guangtu said with some difficulty, Where are you going? Li Tianlan didn't answer this unnecessary question. He glanced at Li Guangtu and said, Get ready. Where are you going? Li Guangtu asked again. Li Tianlan frowned. But at this time he was no longer in the mood to fight with the other party. I'll stay here. Li Guangtu's eyes returned to indifference. He and Li Tianlan were not father and son. But Li Honghe and he were father and son. But whether it was to Li Tianlan or to Li Honghe, Li Guangtu showed only indifference. Li Tianlan raised his palm. Countless sword intents appeared in the ward, entangling Li Guangtu's body layer by layer. Li Guangtu's body remained stiff in the original posture, unable to move. It's not up to you, he whispered. You have to go to Linen with me. There were more and more sword intents in the room, more and more dense, entangling Li Guangtu's body layer by layer. Li Guangtu's figure became blurred and dim in the endless sword intents. and finally was completely hidden by the sword in tents. Li Tianlan turned around and went out. He took out his mobile phone and dialed Qin Weibai's number. The phone was quickly connected. Qin Weibai's soft voice sounded. "You're back." "I'm in the hospital." Li Tianlan's voice was dry. "Get ready, we're going to Linen." Qin Weibai was silent for a moment. She seemed to know what had happened and answered obediently. "Will Saint go?" "He should go back to the southwest." Li Tianlan whispered. With Wei Kunlun's identity, even if he went to Linen, he would go on behalf of Mount Shu. "Got it," Qin Weibai said. "I'm going out now." Li Tianlan silently put down his mobile phone and walked out of the hospital. Li Guangtu, who was bound by layers of sword and tents, floated in the air, almost fixed above Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan glanced at him. The moonlight all over the sky was clear and cold. Li Guangtu's eyes were still cold and emotionless. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little lonely. The news that Li Honghe was about to die was constantly spread as a national affair in Zhongzhou State. At this moment, Li Tianlan really realized that in the future, the Li family that belonged to him, he was the only one left. Chapter 679. Li Tianlan was not the only one who was unprepared for Li Honghe's departure. Even the entire Zhongzhou State was not prepared for Li Honghe's departure. When the news from Lin and spread to Yuzhou Province and the entire Zhongzhou State became silent after an uproar. No one dared to deny Li Honghe's achievements to Zhongzhou State. When the Li family was glorious, he was the god of war of Zhongzhou State. Even when the Li family was down and out, the Li family's camp was still on the border of Zhongzhou State. He was one of the few old people left in Zhongzhou State. He had been in Zhongzhou State for so long that almost everyone had gotten used to it. It seemed that as long as he was in Zhongzhou State, no matter what situation he was in, the entire Zhongzhou State would be at ease. This belief was not inexplicable, and there were also examples that could prove it. More than 3 years ago, during the decisive battle in Heaven Capital, the 5 superpowers united with Annan State to invade the border of Zhongzhou State. The human emperor opened fire. Under the leadership of Dongqing Wudi, the Blood Battalion penetrated 800 miles into Annan State and finally conquered Tiannan, a place that was still unoccupied. At the beginning of the chaos, it was not only the Bloodbath Legion that blocked the elites of the 5 major forces and the Annan rebel army. There was also the Li family. In that battle, all the members of the Li family, who had few members left, were mobilized and defeated the elites of the 5 forces. Li Honghe had been standing on the front line of the battle without retreating. All the major groups in Zhongzhou State had reasons to respect Li Honghe, no matter where they stood. He had stood in Zhongzhou State all his life with a clear conscience. The era when Zhongzhou State was guarded by him was the best era. A hero is past his prime. Time is merciless. It was not that no one thought that Li Honghe would leave, but no one had ever thought that this day would come so quickly and so suddenly. As soon as he received the news, a member of the Parliament of Zhongzhou State who was visiting Europe had already boarded the plane to return to Zhongzhou State overnight. All recent foreign affairs activities of Zhongzhou State were cancelled. The Core Council of Zhongzhou State convened overnight. Before dawn, all 29 members of the Zhongzhou State Parliament received the news. The Special Warfare Headquarters and the Supervisory Council of Zhongzhou State were notified at the same time. The news was passed down to the Speaker of Parliament, the Governor, and the Director of the Special Operations Bureau of each province in Zhongzhou State. All the generals of Zhongzhou State received the news in the morning. Later, some old people who had held important positions in Zhongzhou State also received the news. Everyone who received the message was silently handling their work at their posts. But no one went out of the country, and no one set off for Lin for the time being. But the hill in Westlake in Lin and had become the focus of Zhongzhou State's attention. Everyone was waiting patiently, waiting for the end of a great piece of history. September 20th. It was the 7th day since Li Honghe had been in a coma. The news that the former guardian of Zhongzhou State was about to reach the end of his life finally spread out. The whole dark world was silent. Li Tianlan arrived at Lonely Mountain with Qin Weibai that night. Yes, Lonely Mountain. Li Honghe insisted on not going to the hospital. He used to be an expert at the peak of the invincible realm. As a martial artist, he had the clearest judgment of his body. Li Honghe was not sick. This could be said to be an injury, but it could also be said to be an extreme overdraft after years of overdrafting his life force to maintain his peak state. Under such circumstances, it was meaningless to go to the hospital. He was lying in the cabin he had built with his own hands in Lonely Mountain, facing the vast cemetery of the Li family. He slept quietly, without any sadness or joy. Li Tianlan had been staying by Li Honghe's side. For 7 days, he hardly ate or rested. Most of the time, he sat beside Li Honghe, holding his hand, motionless and silent. She was sitting next to Li Honghe, holding his hand, motionless and silent. Dongqing Rushi in Yuzhou. Tribulation in Taibai Mountain. Tribulation in Taibai Mountain. Wang Yuetong in Beihai. Li Honghe in Linen. More and more people were getting farther and farther away from him, even leaving forever. His life was already infinitely bright and radiant, but in his most beautiful time, in the process of his triumphant progress, perhaps such parting would happen more and more often, so often that he would feel numb and cold, but at least until now he could not accept such parting. His heart ached. It hurt like a knife. The master of Samsara Palace, Tribulation, Dongqing Rushi, Wang Yuetong, Li Honghe. Countless people swayed in front of his eyes, fiercely attacking his heart. His will was exhausted, but he still held on. Even he didn't know how long he should hold on. Would you like to eat something? With light footsteps, Qin Weibai stepped over the simple threshold and came to Li Tianlan's side. Her soft voice was a little pleading. I made it myself. It's all your favorite food. Li Tianlan held Li Honghe's palm and put it to his mouth. In just a few days, the skin on Li Honghe's hand had become completely dry and loose. His body had completely collapsed soft, and he could hardly feel a trace of strength. Li Tianlan looked at him quietly, shook his head and didn't speak. Your Highness, we need to check Senior Li's condition further. You need to leave for a while. Why don't you eat something with Boss Qin? After all, your health is the first priority. An elegant and gentle voice rang out behind Li Tianlan. The voice was extremely strange. Li Tianlan turned his head blankly. In his sight, it was a young woman in her 20s who came in with Qin Weibai. She had a simple face, wore a clean and neat sterile suit, and had a quiet smile. This was not a woman who would make people feel breathtaking at first glance, but she was a woman who made people feel more comfortable the more they looked at her. Her beauty was so calm and collected, like gentle water, soft and cool, with a kind of elegance and tranquility that seemed to seep into one's bones. Li Tianlan looked at her quietly and asked, Who are you? My name is Nalan Qingyu. The woman smiled and reached out her hand, calm and composed. The Nalan family. The physician king family of Zhongzhou State. On the second day after Li Tianlan arrived in Linen, the Nalan family had already sent a rather luxurious medical team, led by Nalan Dongfeng, the leader of the Nalan family, the #1 doctor in Zhongzhou State. 8 famous doctors from the Nalan family discussed Li Honghe's physical condition day and night on Lonely Mountain. It was said that their arrival was ordered by Summer Solstice, the hostess of the Wang family of Beihai. After Li Tianlan swept Beihai, Summer Solstice's move was full of sincerity, but Li Tianlan had never talked to them in depth. In the past few days, the Nalan family had used all their methods. Obviously, they were also at a loss for Li Honghe's current condition. But Nalan Qingyu? Li Tianlan had never heard of this name, but he was sure that this woman was not in the Nalan family's medical team. A newcomer? Li Tianlan was excited for a moment, and his eyes became extremely eager. Do you have a way to save Grandpa? Nalan Qingyu's elegant smile had a hint of sadness. I'm afraid it will be very difficult, she said softly. I agree with my father's conclusion. Old Li's body doesn't have any symptoms. Without any symptoms, there's naturally no way to cure it. Old Li's current condition is that he has overdrawn his life force. For a long period of time, at least 10 years, he has been forcefully protecting his peak state by overdrawing his life force. His body has been severely damaged and his life force has been completely exhausted, so... She did not continue. Li Tianlan's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Vitality, vitality, he muttered to himself and suddenly said, if there's immortality, is it possible? When he said this, his eyes were unusually fierce. He had no immortality. But the Wang family of Beihai did. If he could save Li Honghe, he would do anything. If it's useful, we've used it already, Nailan Qingyu said with a wry smile. In fact, Auntie asked us to come to Lonely Mountain this time. We brought an immortality potion for old Li to use. This can even be counted as outside of the deal between you and the Wang family of Beihai. It's something that Mount Dibing voluntarily offered. But the current situation, immortality is not omnipotent. At present, the Wang family of Beihai's immortality potion has not broken through the existing technical bottleneck. It can directly increase the human body's life force, but it's just a pure increase. Old Li's life force is almost completely exhausted now. Immortality doesn't work on him at all. Her voice was a little regretful, but she had not said some words yet. If there were a few more years, if old Li could hold on for a few more years, maybe everything would be different. She thought of her sister, Silver Eyes, who was now a core figure of the Wang family of Beihai. Nailan Shuriying. Now Nailan Shuriying was trying her best to overcome the technical bottleneck of the immortality potion. The existing immortality potion was heaven-defying enough. It could almost ignore any injury. No matter how serious the injury was, as long as there was a certain vitality, it could be healed immediately under the stimulation of immortality potion. But the expected third generation of immortality potion was to fully activate the human body's vitality. Even if the vitality was exhausted, the human body could be completely activated with the vitality of the immortality potion. Such a potion could almost be said to be truly beyond life and death. Li Honghe's situation was not a problem at all in the new generation of immortality potion. But unfortunately, Li Honghe had no time. Nailan Shuriying had no time either. Li Tianlan stood in front of Li Honghe's bed and was silent for a long time. He had never known what Li Honghe had paid over the years to maintain his peak state. Now that the truth had come to light, he no longer had the chance to salvage everything. In that camp, in that primeval forest, in this lonely mountain, he maintained his state almost cruelly. Why? Li Tianlan knew very well that his grandfather did this for his Li family, not for Li Guangtu's purgatory of heaven capital. Li Tianlan clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and said nothing. Let's go out first. Qin Weibai gently pulled the corner of Li Tianlan's clothes. The Parliament and the major special warfare headquarters have sent a lot of condolences these days. You should respond. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and suddenly asked, what about Kunlun City? Nailan Qingyu carefully examined Li Honghe's body. Qin Weibai froze for a moment and said softly, Kunlun City hasn't responded yet. Yes, no response. In Zhongzhou State today, facing Li Honghe's body, Kunlun City was the quietest one. They didn't respond at all, and didn't even do anything to save face. Their only response was silence. The weird silence made everyone feel uneasy. Li Tianlan sneered and didn't speak. A lot of what people are discussing is that the holes are not filled in well, and the explanation is perfunctory, and so on. In fact, it has nothing to do with holes. The only reason is that the author is not in a good state. So the holes are not filled in well, and the explanation is not done well. Just pretend that they are not filled in well. They will always pull them out and fill them again. They will definitely. Chapter 680. Except for a limited number of people involved, no one knew that Kunlun City, which had been silent about Li Honghe's physical condition and seemed to be indifferent, was actually the force that paid the most attention to Li Honghe. Gu Xingyun's injury had become more and more serious. On that day, Situt Songyue and the murderous weapon-setting sun hit him in the chest at a close distance. Then he was attacked by Lin Yuxian and Li Tianlan. In the maneuver of the two academies, he had been delaying and suppressing his injury. With such a serious injury, it was a miracle that Gu Xingyun could not die. This also showed that Kunlun City's martial arts were indeed extremely solid. However, there was a limit to any strong support. After the day of eradication in Eastern Europe, All those who knew Li Shi's identity could see the position of the hostess of Kunlun City. Some past events seemed to be exposed intentionally or unintentionally. Vague rumors were spreading in every corner of the city. For example, Li Shi was Li Guangtu's woman, but now she became the wife of the governor of Kunlun City. For example, Li Shi was secretly arranged by the Gu family to stay with Li Guangtu. The Gu family had endured for many years, and finally overthrew the Li family and succeeded in ascending the throne. In fact, such a story did not sound like an epic or tragic enemy, and it was even more shameful to Gu Xingyun. Countless eyes in Zhongzhou State that were secretly watching Kunlun City were so strange in Gu Xingyun's eyes. Every piece of news seemed to be secretly reminding him of the exuberant and vibrant green above his head that was comparable to the grassland. This was a knot in his heart that he could not let go for many years. With Li Shi's change of position, gradually, sporadic people began to mention the treason case. This was a major event that caused a sensation in Zhongzhou State, and even the world. But except for the participants, few other people knew the inside story. Li Shi played an extremely important role in the treason case. This was something that very few people knew. But after many years, Li Shi, who killed Li Guangtu, stood beside Li Guangtu again when she was unrestrained after Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan were seriously injured. This might not explain how the treason case was, but when all the things were linked together, at least there was a reason for Zhongzhou State to re-examine the treason case. Similar voices began to sprout quickly. Gu Xingyun, who had been suppressing his injuries, completely broke out in the face of pressure, humiliation, and fear. He vomited blood and fainted. He was immediately sent to the core recuperation base of Kunlun City. Some healing medicines in stock in Zhongzhou State were blended into nutrient solution. Gu Xingyun lay in the nutrient chamber all day long. Although he was still unconscious, his condition had stabilized. Then Li Tianlan swept across Beihai province. Then, the news that Li Honghe was about to die exploded in Zhongzhou State like a heavy bomb. The Li family suddenly became the focus. After Kunlun City confirmed that Li Guangtu had woken up and appeared in Lin, and Gu Qianchuan, who was temporarily in charge of everything in Kunlun City, could no longer sit still and directly force Gu Xingyun to wake up. Every high-level official in Kunlun City knew what Li Guangtu's appearance in Lin meant. The traitor, who had caused great losses to Zhongzhou State many years ago, was now in Zhongzhou State, but the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State had been silent about it. This subtle attitude was a complete nightmare for Kunlun City. As long as Li Guangtu mentioned the case of treason that year, a casual sentence could cause a huge storm to Kunlun City. It was the 8th day since Li Honghe had been in a coma. It was also the 8th day since Gu Xingyun was forced to wake up. Gu Xingyun's face was still pale, his figure was thin, and his hair was dry, but his mental state gradually stabilized. The wind and snow drifted over the city all year round on Kunlun Mountain. Gu Xingyun sat in an exquisite small yard, silently watching the secret report from Kunlun City from Linen. Gu Qianchuan sat in front of him, and also said nothing. Like Gu Xingyun, he was seriously injured. Before the maneuver of the two academies, Li Tianlan directly cut off one of his arms, and then he was seriously injured by Xian Yuanfeng's sword intent in Beijiang. Compared with Gu Xingyun, his injury was not fatal, but under the great pressure, his eyes were sunken, and he looked equally haggard. Is there any way? He looked at Gu Xingyun and asked calmly. Nothing happened. What can I do? Gu Xingyun shook his head. Nailan Qingyu arrived in Lin last night, but Li Honghe still hasn't woken up. With a complicated look in his eyes, he said, Li Honghe really can't hold on this time. Where is Li Guangtu? Gu Qianchuan was mentally unbalanced, and his tone was a little impatient. It was well known that Li Honghe was about to die. These days, although Li Honghe did not go to the hospital, many medical families in Zhongzhou State had sent elites to Lonely Mountain to express their feelings. In addition, the people of the Nailan family were still helpless about Li Honghe's current situation, which was enough to explain the problem. Gu Qianchuan paid attention to Li Guangtu instead of Li Honghe. This man was now the biggest time bomb in Kunlun City. Li Guangtu didn't say anything. Gu Xingyun said lightly. Gu Qianchuan clenched his fists and wanted to lose his temper, but he finally endured it. However, his face was extremely gloomy, and his tone became cold. Of course he didn't say anything. He is now on Lonely Mountain. Even if he wants to say something, who can he say it to? So far he hasn't seen any of the higher-ups. His tone was suppressed to the extreme. Finally he could not bear it anymore. He slammed the table and stood up. Is the Zhongzhou Parliament a bunch of cowards? Useless trash. Li Guangtu was a traitor, and now he was in Zhongzhou state. Why didn't they arrest him? Why didn't you kill him? Gu Xingyan looked at him as if she was looking at an idiot. Capture Li Guangtu and kill him? Even if Li Guangtu really committed treason, Li Honghe was still alive. Zhongzhou state would not kill Li Guangtu at will. Now Li Honghe was about to die, but Li Tianlan was invincible after sweeping Beihai. Compared with Li Honghe's old age, Li Tianlan was only 22 years old. His deterrence was even stronger than Li Honghe's. In the face of this situation, how could Zhongzhou state not worry? Li Tianlan. Li Guangtu. Gu Xingyan looked thoughtful. I hope Li Honghe can die directly. It would be best if he doesn't wake up. Gu Xingyan suddenly said. What do you mean? Gu Qianchuan frowned. Li Tianlan and Li Guangtu are not of the same mind. Gu Xingyan's voice was calm. In the face of external pressure, they may cooperate. But when there is no pressure, their positions must be different. The Li family has been declining for too many years. The purgatory of heaven capital is not the Li family's nirvana rebirth. It is just a force that was developed outside. This force is now somewhat out of touch with the Li family, so some people will support Li Guangtu, and some will support Li Tianlan. Such a contradiction is almost irreconcilable. Are you sure? Gu Qianchuan hesitated. Think about Mormons at the last moment. Gu Xingyan said calmly. The Samsara Palace is a force that fully supports Li Tianlan. In the last strangulation, they showed no mercy to the purgatory of heaven capital. Instead, some people in the purgatory of heaven capital joined the Samsara Palace's camp in the chaos, which is enough to explain the problem. The master of Samsara Palace is a terrible woman. She treats the purgatory of heaven capital like this, which means that she has confirmed that the contradiction between Li Tianlan and Li Guangtu is irreconcilable. Otherwise, the Samsara Palace will not be so cruel to the purgatory of heaven capital. Such a contradiction will break out sooner or later. If Li Honghe dies in a coma, the cracks inside the Li family will be more obvious, and the contradiction between Li Tianlan and Li Guangtu will break out faster. Gu Qianchuan's eyes gradually brightened. You mean that Li Guangtu and Li Tianlan will be too busy to take care of Kunlun City for the time being, because they are eager to take over the Li family? This is the most likely thing. Gu Xingyun's voice became calmer. What do you think Kunlun City is in the eyes of the Li family? Gu Qianchuan was stunned and said without hesitation, of course it's an enemy. Enemy? Gu Xingyan twitched the corner of his mouth with some mockery and self-mockery. That's the position of the Li family in our eyes. As for us, now in the eyes of Li Tianlan and Li Guangtu, we may also be enemies, but more for interests. Li Tianlan is insufferably arrogant and supercilious. With his current strength, give him time, and the whole dark world will be his in the future. Now Kunlun City is not a big threat in his eyes for the time being, so he can let it go for the time being. As for Li Guangtu has always looked down on me and Kunlun City. He won't talk about the treason case for the time being. It's not necessarily good for him to talk about it now. Kunlun City is now the special warfare center of Zhongzhou State, and it can't be brought down by Li Guangtu's words. Besides, there will be no evidence for what he said. We actually have a lot of room for maneuver. But once he says these things, it means that he wants to return to Zhongzhou State, and the purgatory of heaven capital will become very embarrassed in East Island. If I were Li Guangtu at this time, I would choose to put Kunlun City aside. The best choice is not to mention the past, and not to express my position for the time being. He is seriously injured. During the period of time before he recovers, the best way is to do nothing. When he recovers and establishes a connection with the purgatory of heaven capital, whether he really declares Zhongzhou State, violently conquers East Island, or competes with Li Tianlan for the Li family, it will be easier than now. After Li Honghe's death, the Li family has two leaders. In this case, the internal situation is unstable, so they won't rush to deal with Kunlun City. To resist foreign aggression, they must first stabilize the internal situation. When the internal situation is stable, they will deal with Kunlun City. All the interests of Kunlun City will belong to one person, and there will be no variables. Gu Qianchuan was stunned for a while. So in the current situation, we are safe for the time being? He asked. Yes. Gu Xingyun nodded and said. Both Li Guangtu and Li Tianlan want to defeat each other and swallow us alone. Now we are extremely safe. Gu Qianchuan's face turned red. This conclusion was shameful no matter how he heard it. He forced himself to calm down. Thinking of the purgatory of Heaven Capital and Emperor Dong's palace, he frowned tighter and tighter. Li Guangtu, is there a chance to win now? Li Guangtu was seriously injured. Inside the purgatory of Heaven Capital, as some people walked into the Samsara Palace's camp, the internal division would become bigger and bigger. Now they were still in East Island. Even if Li Guangtu did not express his position, Jifeng Sword Reigning School and Wuji Palace would not be idle. During this time, they would definitely target the purgatory of Heaven Capital crazily. At this time, Li Guangtu, who was seriously injured, was held in Li Tianlan's hands. What about Li Tianlan? The 13th-story building was now truly invincible in the world. Li Tianlan swept across Beihai and shone brightly. The remaining forces of the Samsara Palace supported Li Tianlan. The situation in Tiannan gradually became clear. The 5 Eastern European countries continuously sent benefits to Li Tianlan. In Mount Dibing, he could retreat, which also showed that the Wang family of Beihai had promised him something. Inside Zhongzhou State, Li Tianlan had the full support of the giant group, and his own force was also growing rapidly. What was Li Guangtu's chance to win? At present, Li Guangtu is bound to lose. Gu Xingyun said. Gu Qianchuan stared into Gu Xingyun's eyes. Gu Xingyun did not avoid anything and continued. So I'm going to help him. Shall we join forces with the Wang family of Beihai again? Gu Qianchuan asked. No need. Gu Xingyun shook his head. It's useless. The Wang family of Beihai is not what it used to be. It's impossible for them to join forces with us. How are you going to help him? Gu Qianchuan asked. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Gu Xingyun's current thinking was too clear, which was absolutely rational. This showed that he had already seen the current situation of the outside world. But since he was awakened from a coma, he did not mention his next hibernation at all. If he was not worried about the current Li family, why didn't he seize the time to heal? Such a Gu Xingyun clearly gave Gu Qianchuan a feeling that he seemed to be waiting for something. What do you think? Gu Qianchuan asked very seriously. The phone suddenly rang. Gu Xingyun's eyes suddenly condensed. At the same time, Tiannan. In a small city guarded by the rebels of Annan State, an old-fashioned train, which was not common in Zhongzhou State, slowly entered the station with the roar of the whistle. The station, which barely maintained the old order, was crowded with people. Getting on and off the train was a scene that happened at the station every day, every month, every day. The turbulent flow of people gathered and dispersed. Different people left the station and set off in different directions. A black man dressed casually walked out of the crowd, but he did not go far from the station. He walked through the somewhat dilapidated station, turned around, and finally stopped in front of a shabby van. 2 men who were playing poker in front of the van stood up and stared at the black man with vigilance. The black man's expression was relaxed. He suddenly smiled, revealing a row of white teeth. He pulled the collar of his wide casual t-shirt, revealing a Black Shield logo, and said in Annan language, "I'm Black Wolf. 3 hours later, my soldiers will gather at the appointed place." The 2 Annan men in casual clothes breathed a sigh of relief, nodded and opened the door. The black man got in. The Annan national anthem was played in a low voice in the shabby van. In the inconspicuous corner of the roof, the flag of Annan State was crossed with the flag of the rebels. A short man in his 50s sat in the last row of the van and smoked quietly. In the smoke, he squinted at the black man who got on the van and said hoarsely, "How many people do you bring?" 200. The black man grinned and stretched out 2 fingers with a smile. All of them are elites. At the same time, similar scenes were playing out in different corners of different cities. Without anyone noticing, in every corner of Tiannan, one after another, secret armed forces began to gather in the direction of the Annan rebel army. It was not the Annan Freedom Corps pretending to be rebels. It was the real rebel army first announced by the Annan military more than 3 years ago. Yuzhou. In a hotel near Prince Yang's mansion, in the silent environment, a photo was passed around in several people's hands. In the photo was a woman who was clean, clear, and quiet. The target is temporarily in a coma and has no ability to fight back. In the hoarse voice, a man covered in a black robe said lightly, "Number 3, Number 5, Number 7, investigate the terrain inside the hospital tonight. Be ready to act at any time." Eastern Europe. Reki City. In the narrow apartment, Prime Minister Rieker was giving a passionate speech. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, Rieker, who was shrouded in Zhongzhou state, told the best new tomorrow of Wulan state in high spirits. "This is our goal." In the cold voice, a thick finger pointed at Prime Minister Rieker and said lightly, "Make a battle plan. We can only succeed. We can't fail." Tiannan Yuzhareki City. Under the calm general trend, the undercurrent was constantly rolling. One communication message after another was sent out from these places, and finally gathered in the hands of the same person. In Kunlun City, Gu Qianchuan looked at Gu Xingyun's face. His face was still deathly pale and gloomy, but at this moment, the expression hidden behind the frailty clearly had an unfathomable feeling. Li Tianlan is not easy to deal with now. Gu Qianchuan took a deep breath and said seriously, "And we can't help Li Kuangtu now." He paused. Although he didn't want to admit it, he still told the truth. Kunlun City can't give Li Kuangtu a bargaining chip to fight against Li Tianlan at present. After all, Kunlun City had been established for a short time, and its foundation was limited. After the 2 invincible realm experts, Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan, were seriously injured, it immediately looked extremely weak. How could such a Kunlun City help Li Kuangtu? "You're right." Gu Xingyun looked down at his mobile phone. "So I'm not going to give Li Kuangtu anything, and I can't. Then how can we help Li Kuangtu?" Gu Qianchuan asked. "There are many ways to help." Gu Xingyun smiled and said in a cold voice, "We can't strengthen Li Kuangtu, but we can weaken the power in Li Tianlan's hands." "Isn't that helping?" He put down his mobile phone and whispered, "It will be very lively next." Chapter 681. When summer solstice, who hadn't slept all night, walked out of the simple palace that had just been built, she saw Lin Fengting sitting in a daze not far away. Lin Fengting didn't leave Mount Dibbing. Now Mount Dibbing was severely damaged, and there was no traditional reception area. Lin Fengting found a place to settle down. When she saw him again, Summer Solstice suddenly realized that she had been busy dealing with the internal affairs of Beihai these days, and neglected Lin Fengting. Lin Fengting didn't bother her. Not only did he not, but he seemed to have disappeared from Mount Dibbing since he left Beihai. Until today, Summer Solstice saw him again. The place he was sitting on was originally a rockery, but it was cut into a boulder by the messy sword intent. In front of the boulder was a pool. The flowers and plants that were cut into pieces were still floating in the water. It was drizzling, and the rain beat on Mount Dibbing. Lin Fengting's figure was sitting in the rain motionless. It seemed that he had been sitting there all night. Summer Solstice walked over and stood beside him without saying anything. She suddenly found that she didn't know what to say. The friendship of many years ago seemed to have become thinner and thinner with the constant turbulence of the general trend and wind and rain. They used to be very good friends, but at this time, they couldn't find a common topic that belonged to them. Summer Solstice was silent for a long time, and then whispered, "Have you heard about Senior Li's body?" "I haven't got the latest information yet." Lin Fengting looked at the lotus cut by the sword intent in the pool and shook his head. "There is no way," Summer Solstice said. "I just talked to Qingyu on the phone, and the conclusion is still the same. There is no hope. Now they are trying their best to wake Senior Li up temporarily. This is the only thing they can do. Lin Fengting was silent. After a long time, he took a deep breath and whispered, Senior Li. Senior Li was very good to us when we were young. Summer Solstice's eyes were in a trance. She bit her lip and didn't speak. Li Honghe used to be really good to them. The beauty of the past and the hatred of the present finally became the most complicated feeling in the face of death. At this moment, Summer Solstice really couldn't say anything. How is Senior Li's situation? Lin Fengting looked at Summer Solstice and asked. His vitality was completely exhausted, but his desire to live was strong. However, his completely exhausted body suppressed his will, which was the reason why he fell into a coma. Furthermore, an absolutely powerful will is still working hard to maintain his body, which is the reason why he hasn't died yet. Summer Solstice sighed softly. How can a person like Senior Li really not let go of life and death? Since he refused to leave, there should be some unfinished business, right? So I gave a death order. The people of the Nalen family are all here. No matter what, we must make him wake up temporarily. Lin Fengting's gaze was a little erratic. No one knew what he was thinking. Xia Ji inadvertently saw his eyes and was slightly stunned. At this moment, Lin Fengting gave her a very strange feeling. His trance didn't seem to be because of Li Honghe's imminent death. At this moment, he was obviously thinking of something else. What was he thinking? Summer Solstice was curious. There's no hope? Lin Fengting was in a daze for a while before he asked in a low voice. Summer Solstice was even more curious, but she still shook her head and said, No. In other words, Lin Fengting's voice was a little bitter. If there's no hope for Senior Li's condition, then there's even less hope for those who are more serious than him, right? More serious? Summer Solstice was a little stunned. In her knowledge? No, in the knowledge of modern medicine, there was only one condition more serious than Li Honghe's. That was real death. If a person's vitality is completely exhausted and he has no desire to live, Lin Fengting said in a low voice, Is there any other way? There won't be such a person. Summer Solstice looked at Lin Fengting for a long time before she said firmly, Such a person can only be a dead person. Li Honghe's vitality was completely exhausted. The reason why he didn't die was that his willpower was incredibly tough, so he could barely stay in a coma. The exhaustion of vitality itself was death. If there was no desire to live, how could he live? I'm not making an assumption. Lin Fengting shook his head. If there is such a person and he hasn't died for the time being, is there any way for the Wang family of Beihai? He looked at Summer Solstice with bloodshot eyes. It was not pleading or other emotions, but a kind of exhaustion that went deep into his bones. Summer Solstice only felt a little incredible. She really couldn't think of how a person who had no desire to live and no vitality could live. And what was the form of such a life? No. She shook her head. If there is such a person, even if he barely doesn't die, it should be because of special reasons that he can't hold on for long. The Wang family of Beihai has no practical way for the time being. For the time being. Lin Fengting's eyes suddenly lit up. For the time being. Summer Solstice nodded. Lin Fengting's breathing was a little rapid. There was no practical way for the time being. From another perspective, the Wang family of Beihai now had a theoretical way, but it had not been implemented. What way? He asked straightforwardly. The third generation of eternal life. Summer Solstice said and then smiled bitterly. The third generation of eternal life. Our expected effect is to completely activate the exhausted vitality of the human body, and then fill the human body with vitality. But the research on the third generation of eternal life has lasted for several generations. At present, there are still many technical bottlenecks that have not been broken through. And the situation you mentioned is too special. Even if the third generation of eternal life is really developed successfully, and that person can hold on until then, we still need someone to contact her in person and record her physical data. Lin Fengting was a little hesitant. He rubbed his temples tiredly. After a long time he whispered, Okay. His voice was a little hesitant, but he finally made up his mind. I'll inform the family and let Silver Eyes go there. Is there really such a person? Summer solstice felt more and more incredible. Lin Fengting smiled bitterly and did not speak. But Nalan, she's going to Tiannan. Li Tianlan, summer solstice frowned. It doesn't matter. Lin Fengting said calmly, there are people in the Lin clan who take care of the patients. Nalan will go there to see the situation first, and then she can come back. The Lin clan will regularly send her physical data, so that she can master it in the first place. Summer solstice narrowed her eyes and nodded. I'll inform Nalan later. Have you ever thought? Lin Fengting suddenly whispered. The life and death of the Wang family of Beihai will one day depend on Nalan? He smiled bitterly. Anyway, I've never thought about it. What do you mean? Summer solstice's eyes suddenly focused. In the next moment, she asked, who is the person you said needs treatment? Lin Fengting shook his head in silence and changed the topic. Is there anything the Lin clan can help with in the research of the third generation of immortality? Talent, materials, anything. His tone was indifferent, but extremely firm, with unshakable determination. Li Honghe could not afford to wait for the third generation of immortality. But after all, someone could try and hope for it. We need ice essence, ice heartgrass, and some other precious medicines now. If the Lin clan is willing to trade, it's the best. Summer solstice's tone was a little expectant. Ice essence. Lin Fengting smiled bitterly. Ice heartgrass was the core medicine for making immortality potion. It grew in an extremely harsh environment. The most important thing was that its output was so low that it made people desperate. It was a priceless thing. Most of these things were concentrated in the Wang family of Beihai. But obviously, in order to overcome the technical bottleneck of the third generation of immortality, the Wang family of Beihai had been out of stock in this respect. There were still a few in the Ice Heartgrass Forest clan. But the Lin clan really did not have ice essence, which was difficult to preserve. Looking for it, at present, only a small amount of ice essence had been found in the polar region. Looking for it deliberately was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, whether it was the Wang family of Beihai or other countries, they all had professional teams that specialized in collecting these precious medicinal materials. But it was not easy to find ice essence. Do you have any information? Lin Fengting suddenly said. Which forces or countries have ice essence at present? What do you want to do? Summer solstice's body shook. At this moment, all she saw in Lin Fengting's eyes was persistence, even madness. She took a deep breath and emphasized, you are the patriarch of the Lin clan. Lin Fengting's intention of asking this could not be clearer. What did he want to do? He wanted to rob it. I'm not anymore. Lin Fengting said faintly. I will leave the Lin clan in the near future, not set up a branch, and be a free man. He smiled and joked. If you have any nice code name, you can give me one. Well, how about I call myself Sword Emperor? Summer solstice felt a little ridiculous in her heart, but when she heard Lin Fengting's joke, she could not help but glare at him. Lin Yuxian, the first heir of the Lin clan, left the Lin clan's headquarters. Now Lin Fengting, the patriarch of the Lin clan, also wanted to leave the Lin clan's headquarters? Are you crazy? Summer solstice asked incredulously. I want information. Lin Fengting did not say much. He was very tired. Really tired. Summer solstice took several deep breaths and said slowly, it is difficult to perfectly preserve things like ice essence. The Wang family of Beihai is the best at this point. At present, we don't have exact information about several countries that have the ability to preserve ice essence. Oh, Lin Fengting said thoughtfully. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly asked, what code name do you think is suitable for me? Sword Emperor? Sword Saint? Sword. Summer solstice rolled her eyes. When she was about to speak, Tang Shi, the future hostess of the Wang family of Beihai, suddenly trotted over. Summer solstice was a little surprised and nervous. What's wrong, Shi? Yuetong woke up. Tang Shi said with some excitement. Yuetong just woke up. Summer solstice was extremely surprised. Lin Fengting also stood up at the same time. Let's go and have a look. Chapter 682. Wang Yuetong recovered well. Although Xie had only half of the immortality potion with her, the strong vitality it contained was enough to heal most of the fatal injuries in the shortest time. Under the nourishment of the immortality potion, Wang Yuetong, who had slept for a while, not only recovered, but her physical condition was even better than before the injury. But Song Xi, who had been taking care of her for the past few days, could see that Wang Yuetong was haggard. This kind of haggard did not originate from the body. Instead, it came from the heart. She saw Wang Yuetong open her eyes. Seeing the confusion on her face after waking up was a normal reaction after being unconscious for a long time. That confusion immediately turned into emptiness. Lifeless, gloomy, and disheartened, she lay on the tidy bed and stared at the ceiling in silence. Her eyes, which had lost their usual vigor, blinked for a long time. It was a true emptiness. There were no emotions or thoughts. When Tang Shi hurried over with Xie and Lin Fengting, Song Xi was holding Wang Yuetong's hand and saying something. But no matter what she said, Wang Yuetong did not speak, and even the look in her eyes did not change. Aunt. Seeing Xie come in, Song Xi stood up and shouted helplessly. How is it? Xie's voice was very anxious. No matter how calm she usually was, she was still a mother after all. In the face of her own child, she couldn't not care. He's conscious, but he refuses to speak. Song Xi sighed softly and said, her worries are too heavy. Summer Solstice was stunned. She walked to the bed and sat down. Looking at the motionless Wang Yuetong, she whispered, Tong. Wang Yuetong did not respond. Xie forced a smile and whispered, are you hungry? Get up, take a shower and change your clothes. I'll personally cook some of your favorite dishes, okay? Wang Yuetong's eyes moved. She blinked her clear but dim eyes, and tears flowed down silently. Xie's smile became more and more reluctant. All the emotions in her heart were blocked. She forced a smile and said, silly girl, you can't talk after sleeping? Yes. Wang Yuetong said softly. Get up and take a bath first, okay? I was in a coma for a few days. I was so dirty. Summer Solstice grabbed her daughter's palm hard and trembled slightly. Sure. Wang Yuetong nodded. Tears were still flowing down her cheeks and fell on her clothes, but her tone was extremely calm, even a little dead. What would you like to eat? I'll do it now. You've just woken up. Can you take it easy? Summer Solstice touched Wang Yuetong's hair. Wang Yuetong didn't dodge and said quietly, either is fine. She slowly sat up and wiped away her tears. She got off the bed and said, I'm going to take a shower. Before he could speak, Lin Fengting coughed and said, I'm going to take a walk outside. Xie nodded and looked at her daughter's back. Wang Yuetong's delicate figure was as light as a feather, without any vitality, just like a walking corpse. Summer Solstice sighed softly, and was lost in thought. Auntie, if Yuetong is leaving. Tang Shi suddenly spoke hesitantly. Song Xi silently poured a glass of water for Summer Solstice, wanting to say something but hesitating. What do you want to say? Summer Solstice looked at her and asked with a smile. Song Xi was in good physical condition. Now she was nearly 3 months pregnant. She was still slim and exquisite, and she didn't have a strong reaction. But she was pregnant with the grandson of the Wang family of Beihai. No matter how much attention she paid to her, it was not too much. No. Song Xi shook her head and said, I'm also thinking about this. If Yuetong wants to leave, will Auntie let her go? When Li Tianlan wanted to forcibly take away the injured Wang Yuetong, it was Lin Fengting who stopped him. But he didn't stop him. Lin Fengting just said that Wang Yuetong could temporarily recuperate in Beihai, but he completely respected her choice after she woke up. Summer Solstice had no objection to this. But now that Wang Yuetong had woken up, what should she do next? Summer Solstice was silent for a long time. She stood up and looked out of the window. It was still raining outside. Lin Fengting stood in the rain and looked into the distance. Standing in this place with many good memories for him, his figure looked a little lonely. Summer Solstice thought of the sword that Wang Yuetong stabbed into her own chest. She shook her head and whispered, there is no right or wrong choice. As long as you don't regret it, it's worth it. It was worth it. The door of the bathroom was opened. After washing up, Wang Yuetong blow-dried her hair and changed into a clean off-shoulder dress. Mum, she called out. Sister-in-law. She called out this name twice, to Tang Shi and Song Ci. During the time of taking a bath, her mood seemed to have completely calmed down and was no longer in the state of a walking corpse, but she still looked a little depressed. Ah. Summer Solstice, who was in deep thought, looked at the time and said, I forgot to cook. I'll go now. No need. Wang Yuetong shook her head, looked at the autumn rain outside the window, and whispered, I want to go out for a walk. She combed her short hair and walked to the door. Put on your clothes. Don't catch a cold. Tang Shi trotted over, took off her little coat and put it on Wang Yuetong. I'll go with you. I'll take a walk with her. Summer Solstice said. You and Song Ci also have a rest. You've worked hard these days. Tang Shi was stunned and nodded. Wang Yuetong let Tang Shi put on her coat. She didn't say anything and just walked out quietly. Lin Fengting turned to look at Wang Yuetong and waved his hand with a smile. Wang Yuetong called him uncle and then walked past him. Lin Fengting was a little confused. He looked at Summer Solstice, who was walking behind him, and followed her silently. The storm that swept Beihai had passed. The autumn rain was hazy, beating on the ruins of Mount Dibing bit by bit. Mount Dibing had few hands now, so the reconstruction progress was relatively slow. When the internal security troops came back after the maneuver, it wouldn't take long to restore the past scene. Wang Yuetong walked silently, without any communication with Summer Solstice, and Lin Fengting behind her. Along the broken steps, she walked up to the stage of Formidable Person, and saw the silver moon inserted on the stone of Formidable Person. Under the gloomy sky, the slender body of the silver moon sword seemed to still emit a hazy silver light. The heartbreaking sword, like a drop of water, gently trembled on Wang Yuetong's chest, as if responding to the sword intent of the silver moon. Wang Yuetong didn't care about that. She looked at the names carved on the stone of Formidable Person for a long time. Below the stage of Formidable Person were the palaces of the Wang family of Beihai that had stood for hundreds of years, but now became ruins. Most of the ruins had been moved away, but a small number of them were still there. The continuous palaces in the past were gone. A large open space appeared on Mount Dibing, cold and desolate. Wang Yuetong walked along the ruins step by step. Her footprints covered the top of the mountain, but she was always silent. Below the top of the mountain, there were still countless flowers and plants on Mount Dibing. In the hazy autumn rain, the fragrance of flowers lingered, and it was still a magnificent scene. Wang Yuetong walked down the path and past many enemies. She went to the sea of flowers that she liked to go to when she was a child, the pavilion where she used to play hide-and-seek with Wang Shengxiao and Tang Shi, and the small lake where she used to be in a daze. The autumn rain fell incessantly. She walked on Mount Dibing for a long time, and her footprints almost covered the entire mountain. The top of the mountain, the mountainside, and the foot. She had been calm, but now she was silent and solemn. She stared at every corner of Mount Dibing and never spoke. Summer Solstice didn't speak either. She watched her daughter walk all the way down the mountain, and seemed to know her daughter's decision, but she never said anything. What is Tianlan doing now? Along the smooth mountain road, when they were about to reach the foot of the mountain, Wang Yuetong suddenly asked softly. Summer Solstice cheered up and said softly, Senior Li's health is failing. It's hard for him to get through this. Li Tianlan is now accompanying him in linen. Calculating the time, it's probably in these 2 days. Wang Yuetong's body stiffened for a moment, and she didn't speak. Summer Solstice took 2 steps forward and said softly, Do you want to go to linen? If Wang Yuetong wanted to go to linen, she would not object. At this time, the Wang family of Beihai would go to an important person who was inextricably linked to Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong would show her goodwill, and also represent the Wang family of Beihai to express sincerity. Wang Yuetong was the most suitable candidate. Even if Wang Yuetong stayed with Li Tianlan in the future and never came back, Summer Solstice did not intend to interfere. Wang Yuetong's sword almost left her life on Mount Dibing. It was not the half of immortality potion that saved her, but Li Tianlan. If this was Wang Yuetong's final choice, Summer Solstice did not intend to stop her. This was her daughter's own choice. As long as it was worth it. Linen? Wang Yuetong was silent for a moment and asked, "Why should I go to Linen?" Summer Solstice was a little stunned. She seemed to have not expected Wang Yuetong's question at all. She was stunned for a moment and then said softly, "Li Tianlan." "Li Tianlan," Wang Yuetong laughed. Her voice was pure and without any emotion. "He is an enemy of the Wang family of Beihai. He killed so many people on Mount Dibing. Now his relatives are dying. Isn't it a good thing for Beihai? Why should I go?" Lin Fengting frowned and took a deep look at Wang Yuetong. He suddenly said, "You mean, I have nothing to do with him?" Wang Yuetong said quietly. At this moment, she was calmer than ever. The decision she made was also firmer than ever. It didn't matter. He killed so many people on Mount Dibing. She stabbed him with the sword. In the wind and rain that night, when her long sword stabbed her chest resolutely, everything before had passed. She had already died once that night. What she owed Li Tianlan, she had paid it all. She couldn't pay it off. Wang Yuetong's eyes were a little dazed. She suddenly thought of what he said when they met, and left for the first time. "Then I'll owe you." Wang Yuetong smiled. She didn't need Li Tianlan to be responsible for her future life. She didn't need to be responsible for Li Tianlan anymore. Heavenly sons, mediocre people, success or failure. It had nothing to do with her. Lin Fengting frowned tightly. In the face of this unexpected answer, he suddenly did not know what to say. Summer Solstice showed a smile. She smiled with relief. "Tong, welcome home." Her voice was soft and fresh. Wang Yuetong did not respond to her. Standing at the foot of Mount Dibing, she turned her head and stared deeply at the place where she grew up. After a long time she whispered, "I'll remember this place." Summer Solstice blinked blankly. "But this place has nothing to do with me." Lin Fengting's face changed. Summer Solstice's expression suddenly stiffened. Wang Yuetong shook her head and took 2 steps back, still looking at Mount Dibing. Her eyes were no longer calm. As her eyes flashed, it was full of that night's saber light, sword shadow and storm. The collapsed ruins, the splashing blood, the scattered corpses, and the dazzling sword light. It was Li Tianlan. It was also the Wang family of Beihai. She didn't know how to face the family that had raised her since she was a child. Just like she didn't know how to face Li Tianlan now. If she couldn't face him, then she would leave. Wang Yuetong gritted her teeth and glanced at Summer Solstice. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm leaving." She paused and continued, "I won't come back." "Where are you going?" Summer Solstice's face changed dramatically. Wang Yuetong did not answer. She smiled and waved her hand. Then she slowly turned around in the bleak drizzle, and left Mount Dibing in the drizzle. She was faint, but she had no reluctance to leave. At this moment she was not Li Tianlan's woman, nor was she the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. She was just Wang Yuetong. Just herself. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.